Free Talk Live Saturday show. The phones are open. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And here tonight, you've got Ian.
Bigless Mountaineer.
And the Lord Reverend Dr. Captain Kickass is also here.
So it's been a big week for economic bad news. The Fed hiked their interest rates again by 0.75 percentage points.
Don't say it, hike!
So no and yes.
No and yes.
No and yes. It has not been a bad week.
Really?
Yeah, no. So for one thing, absolutely everyone in the financial world was expecting a rate hike.
Okay.
They've long announced that, this is part of their program to reduce inflation.
Which is a load. I mean, it will maybe reduce the number of bank loans, and technically that is a factor of inflation. But it's not going to stop the government from spending.
Well, I mean... So it reduces inflation. It doesn't end inflation. It doesn't stop it. It certainly doesn't reverse inflation.
Right.
But it does slow down the process. Now,
Well, I mean, you can only slow down I don't even know how many tens of trillions of dollars they have, created out of thin air and already put into the economy that we're just now beginning to see the effects of.
Mm-hmm. So the three things that they're doing to slow inflation, one is the rate hike. So like you were saying, when you hike the base rate for all of the loans, fewer loans, especially like housing loans.
Yeah, that's bad news for anybody that was looking to buy a house.
Yep, absolutely. Bad timing for it. I would wait until something in the system breaks and they're forced to backpedal on this. Number two is they are no longer buying up their own treasuries, which is basically printing money for the government.
He said number two.
Yeah. Well, it is a lot of number two, let me tell you.
The Federal Reserve is not buying the government's treasuries anymore?
Correct.
Really?
Correct.
I thought that was their whole job.
No. So they do a number of things. But yeah, at the moment, they are not buying treasuries. And it looks like they're going to start what usually happens is that treasuries mature and then they buy new ones if you're trying to keep that even. And it looks like they're just going to let some of them roll off the books is what they call it. Instead of just replacing those with more treasuries every time that they come up. So the third thing that they're doing is and this is a little bit complex, but it's called a reverse repo rate. And basically what that means is that...
It sounds like more BS.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're talking about the financial system.
I've heard stories about this reverse repo rate. I couldn't begin to explain to you what it is. It has something to do with banks.
I can simplify it pretty well. So just real quick, though, remember, we're talking about the financial market. The entire thing is BS. And just like the legal system, the only way that it works is that people are so intimidated by it that they think they can't possibly know what's going on.
Well, finish your definition because we have more to say about it.
And the reverse repo rate is so banks can do whatever they want with the money that they've got as far as investments go. Now, with the reverse repo rate, if they keep that at a certain level, then the banks get paid just to park that with the Federal Reserve. So as long as there's more than the basic interest rate on the reverse repo rate, then the Fed will pay the other banks to just park their money there for the time being. So when things start breaking, that's probably the first thing that they're going to change. They're going to change the reverse repo rate, which will bring that money back into the market, which will get a lot of treasuries bought up because that's the next best thing. Because they want to control their risk, but they also want to make money. So
isn't this reverse repo thing in recent months been at its highest point ever? Overnight, banks are piling in over $1 trillion or something into this thing. Yeah,
and this has been going on for a while. Weirdly enough, the timing was Biden had just met that day with Putin, so it's some really strange timing on this stuff.
Well, and even more interesting is something that I know both E and I are eager to talk about, which is the changing of the definition of the word recession.
Oh yeah. No, that's actually good news as far as the markets go. So when there is officially a recession, then everyone's obligated to freak out and the market has to crash. Now, we are in a recession. We have been for quite some time, and it is usually, in fact, almost always throughout the world for quite some time, I mean, at least the last 50 years plus, it is pretty much always defined as 2 quarters with a negative GDP.
Yes,
right.
and in fact,
Gross domestic product.
there are many examples of people, including presidents, multiples of them, defining it in exactly that way. 2 quarters of negative rates.
Which, so, I mean, on the face of it, by the basic definition they've been using for over half a century, like, you are already in a recession before it gets recognized for half a year. So,
because those numbers come out much later.
Right, exactly. And I mean, these numbers were basically available a month ago, but it wasn't official yet, so we could, and that's what
It's still not official because they've changed the definition.
Right. And this is what I was freaked out about a month ago, and I'm like, oh no, and I had my dates wrong, so I thought that they were doing it like one day right after the other last month. I thought it was going to be the rate hike and the numbers coming out, but I forgot that they can actually shift it by a month and pretend it's not happening for an additional month because it's not official. Now, the gross domestic product numbers are official, but they've changed what the definition of a recession is.
And furthermore, according to some folks on the internet, Wikipedia has made the change, the definition of recession. But oddly enough, apparently the definition of the word definition has also been changed on Wikipedia. So it went from like, definition, I don't know the exact wording, I'm paraphrasing, but something about, definition being like sort of the permanent meaning of the word, and words can have multiple definitions, blah, 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 to a fluid thing that changes according to the society in which the word is used. And so
I saw that. I just want to say this. I saw that on social media, and I'm on the page for definition right now. I don't see the word fluid.
Okay.
So that might be fake.
I did say I was paraphrasing as well, so it's entirely possible that is fake. I just think that it's...
Or they might be making fun of the change in the definition. Well, I mean, there have been plenty of changes in definitions, the most recent one being recession. But they might be making fun of that by saying, look, Wikipedia even changed the definition of definition.
Yeah. Well, and we can get into that, but... you made a statement, and everything that you've laid out, I totally believe, as far as what you've read and that kind of a thing, and it jives with what I've read. How is any of this good news?
Oh, because it could have been an absolute crash. So, for example, you know how Bitcoin is above 20,000 now?
It is 24 or something.
Maybe 23.
Yeah, it could have been below 15. Seriously.
Why would Bitcoin care about what these bankers are doing?
So at this point, the majority of the money that is in cryptocurrency is not like the original tech people. It's not the libertarians. Most of the money right now is from the finance sector. And the finance sector has these habits that they've built up with the stock market. So they treat this just like a stock. And to be fair, it does trade about as easily as a stock on like your Robin Hoods and whatever. You can get onto your phone and go beep boop. Okay, I've traded that. So as far as the ease of trade from the user standpoint, it acts like a stock. So they just use all of these bad habits that they've built up from the financial sector and they apply them to cryptocurrency. So like when their loans get called in, they will pull money from anywhere they can to make sure that those don't get liquidated. That's why gold went down. That's why cryptocurrency went down especially fast.
Okay, are you saying though that because the government is lying about the definition of recession, that has fooled the markets into not having a total
absolutely
heart attack?
The financial people know better, but they don't have to act like it's a recession now, and they don't have to worry that normal people who are not in the financial sector will freak out and change their habits.
Okay, I've seen so many clips from this White House spokesbureaucrat talking about recession where she's actually not talking about it. She keeps denying and moving the goalposts and distracting from the original question. So have they actually redefined it, or are they just saying, oh, that's not the definition? We'll continue here in moments. It's Free Talk Live.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the free private cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. FreePrivateCities.com. There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in Liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Free Talk Live.
So that's what government does, right? It's a tool of force. It's a coercive monopoly. It's a violent monopoly. And whoever's in charge gets to wield it for their benefit. They get to promote their views and force them down the throat of everybody else. They get to extract money from everybody and use it to benefit their friends.
Let's outlaw democracy instead of outlawing Islam.
That would make more sense. Outlawing government would make more sense than trying to ban people from coming to what at one time was the greatest plot of land on the entire earth. I don't know if it can make that. I don't know if we can make that claim anymore.
But the evidence is that it cannot claim to be the freest, economically freest country in earth. Is all you have to do is look at the Conservative Heritage Foundation's numbers, and you can go to freetheworld.com. Look there too. The fact is, the United States, not the freest country in the world. Sorry.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, and you can join us here. Dial in at 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And you can bring up anything you want to discuss. With you in the studio tonight, it's Ian.
Peakless Mountaineer.
And some guy who's on caffeine.
All right. And that's the captain.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
So it occurred to me over the break a real simple way of talking about what the reverse repo rate is.
Yeah.
So you know how with your savings account they give you 0.19% annual returns or something like that. Right. You know this just unbelievably tiny amount of it of money to save there. So if you're a bank, you get this special huge rate of 2 2%, or at least now it's now it's up to a point where, oh well, since this is higher than my base rate for government loans, which is treasuries and bonds and all that stuff, because treasuries are a hedge against risk. So, like, you're trying to make money, but you're not trying to be too risky. So they'll take these treasuries, even though they know that inflation is bigger than the treasury amount, just to reduce their risk. And since this rate, the reverse repo rate changed, instead of taking treasuries, they can just park it at the Fed and also get a reasonable rate for it.
It sounds like some crap that they just made up and pulled out of their butts.
Just all of it is crap that they made up.
Quantitative easing, right? These are terms that, I'm not familiar with it. I'm no economist, and I loosely follow the economy. But what I do is I try to apply Austrian economics principles. And so for our listeners out there, that just means that, like, the basics of economics are the real economics, right? Supply and demand. It's really all you need to know, generally speaking. Now we're talking about all of these terms, these, verbal gymnastics that these people like to put on, and especially like reverse rate. So at first there was a repo rate, and then they went, we got to reverse that. So now we're going to call it the reverse repo rate or something along those lines.
And there is a repo. I mean, you have to assume that 99% of all the possible complications that could possibly exist, A, have been invented, and B, are being used.
Right.
Like this entire thing, like that's literally how you make like oodles of money in the financial world, is you come up with a new way to overcomplicate things that no one's ever figured out before and is not technically illegal yet.
And I want to point out that this is what keeps people voting, because they believe that, oh my gosh, stuff like the economy, way too complex for me to understand. We better have these people over here in charge of that crap because they're much smarter than we are.
The economy's not hard to understand. I mean, supply and demand, but then banking is just unnecessarily complicated. It doesn't need to be like that. So let me see if I'm following what you're saying here about this reverse repo rate. Normally, banks might put the extra cash they have into treasury bonds, maybe short-term, maybe long-term, whatever. But now the Federal Reserve is offering them an alternative, and they can make as much, if not more, by doing this reverse repo thing instead. Right.
So the thing about buying these treasury bonds is that produces more money. So if they do this if they change the reverse repo rate so that it's high enough, then these banks don't have to, and also there's like only so much that you can buy and you have to do certain things with it.
Only so much repo rate or
so many treasuries that you can buy. There's only so many that you can buy at a time, and honestly, I can scarcely think of a more regulated industry than money. Like, there are rules about rules about rules about rules. So one of the ways that you can get around this is to do this, and around this is to do this. So one of the ways that to reduce your risk is to just park it at the Fed. But if they're not giving you that much return on that, then you're losing money because of inflation.
Okay.
So since they increased that rate, it pulls money out of circulation. So all this money that could be buying new treasuries, well, if you buy new treasuries, then they're going to print more money.
Right. Okay. So they flooded the market with a whole bunch of new money that they printed out of thin air, and now they're coming up with a way for some people to park some money in places so that there's less of it in circulation.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Thanks for clearing that up. Let's go to Major Payne on the line here in Michigan. Go ahead, Major.
Hey, yeah, I want to bring up the magic bean counters in Washington, but I want to talk about China too, if we got a second. If they use the mathematical formula that was used back in the 80s to define inflation, we'd now be at 17.3%.
You getting that off Shadow Stats?
What's that?
Are you getting that off of Shadow Stats? There's a website that always keeps track.
You what?
I got that off John Hannity today.
I suspect he's getting it from the shadow stats. We talked about it earlier this week. They use the old calculation method for calculating the CPI.
Yeah, it's really similar to, we've redefined. We've redefined what counts as the CPI numbers. We've redefined what counts as a recession.
Unemployment numbers, they do the same thing with.
Right.
Exactly. Magic bean counters. You can't trust them. I'm one of them.
Okay.
But this China thing, not only Taiwan bluster, they're buying up as much farmland in the U.S. as they can, much of it near and or adjacent to nuclear facilities, military installations. I
can explain a bit about that actually. So Evergrande is one of the biggest real estate companies in China, and they have just crashed. And the government has decided not to bail them out, which is kind of bewildering.
What?
And so this is kind of a cultural difference. So in America, we know that I can't just put a bunch of money under the mattress because it's getting inflated away. So what Americans do for their retirement is they'll put it in stocks and bonds. Mostly stocks because, like I was saying, bonds don't increase at the rate of inflation. Now, what the Chinese do is they put that money in land. So, and there's this enormous economic destruction that's going on in China right now, where there's runs on the bank that we were covering that they seem to be trying to stop that with literal tanks. But yeah, you've got one of the biggest real estate companies in China has just absolutely gone to pot. So they're looking to other parts of land. And I mean, American land is extraordinary stuff. We do have some of the best land for growing food in the world. So since they can't invest in their local property, they're buying up some in America.
Well, from what I just heard, somebody's trying to push a bill through the House or some such thing, taking China to the cleaners on this and telling them they can't buy land here. You can't. As a citizen, I can't go to Canada and buy land. I know a doc that's got a cabin up there, but it's like a 99-year lease.
Well, they say the same thing about Mexico for retirees, people who want to buy a piece of land maybe on the beach, especially the beach. They restrict United States folk from purchasing land. However, if you form the right type of business entity, you can indeed purchase land.
Where there's a will, there's a way. Thank you, Major, for the call tonight. That's what corporations are all about, right?
That's right. Legal fiction.
The number is 603-283-6160. Coming up, I've got a clip from this bureaucrat who is the spokesbureaucrat for the White House on the question of what's the definition of recession. We'll see what their official answer is coming up. Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odyssey, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off, now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. Thankfully, Odyssey started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odyssey. You can watch live or anytime on our Odyssey channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odyssey today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review. And the week ended without any grain shipments leaving Ukraine's Black Sea ports, despite an agreement struck 1 week ago between Russia and Ukraine that was supposed to allow the resumption of grain exports. The UN said details to secure the safe passage of ships through the waterway were still being finalized on Friday. FSN's Sergio Olmos spent much of the week in Odessa, waiting for the first ships to depart.
President Volodymyr Zelensky said that they're waiting on the UN to give the go-ahead for the ships to pass. It is a very perilous journey. There is mines in this Black Sea planted by the Ukrainian military. Some of them have been removed, but not all of them. For that reason, a Ukrainian government vessel will guide the civilian ships out of the port through the Black Sea. to safely navigate the waters.
The week ended in Britain with Foreign Secretary Liz Truss seeming to open up a lead in the race to become the UK's next Prime Minister. She was perceived to have won a series of encounters over the last few days with Rishi Sunak, the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, and she won the influential backing this week of Defence Secretary Ben Wallace.
I think she's authentic. What you see is what you get. She's quite feisty. I've seen her take on, other nations and stand up for Britain.
The week ended in the US with tragedy in the state of Kentucky. Flash floods killed at least 16 people, including 6 children. Kentucky's governor is Andy Beshear.
We've got at least 6 dead children. It's even harder for those families and those communities. So keep praying. There's still a lot of people out there, still a lot of people unaccounted for. We're going to do our best to find them all.
Inflation was on the minds of governments and citizens all over the world again this week. The US Federal Reserve raised interest rates by another 75 basis points, setting a record for 2 back-to-back such increases. Fed Chair Jerome Powell.
I do not think the US is currently in a recession. There are just too many areas of the economy that are performing too well.
But by normal yardsticks, America is now recessionary after recording a second successive quarter of negative growth. President Xi Jinping warned President Biden to be clear-eyed about Taiwan. In their first leader-level conversation for 4 months, the Chinese leader repeated his earlier claim that US support for the island means Washington is playing with fire. The World Health Organization declared monkeypox a global health emergency. That took place in the same week the US notched up the largest number of cases worldwide. And the world mourned the British actor Bernard Cribbins this week. He died at the age of 93, just weeks after filming some fresh scenes for Doctor Who. His career spans 75 years, from The Railway Children to The Wombles, Jackanory to Coronation Street. He was a UK national treasure. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and the phones are open. If you want to join in, the number is 603-283-6160. Used to be the definition of recession was 2 consecutive quarters with a negative GDP, decline in the gross domestic product. And now the White House is saying, and all their associates and the media, they're all saying, oh, no, that's not the definition.
Hopefully the recession obsession leads us to secession.
I hope so, too.
Amen.
We're going to get into that a little further, but I do want to let you know about an upcoming event that our very own Mark Edge will be speaking at coming up in October 21st through the 23rd in Prague. He'll be at the Free Cities Foundation's annual conference. They call it Liberty in Our Lifetime. The theme for this year is Parallel Structures for Progress. They'll be showcasing autonomous cities and international, or rather intentional, although I'm sure they're international, communities that are springing up around the world, offering opportunities for settlers to live freer lives. You can go to the conference and save 20% on your tickets if you get them early by going to lifetimeliberty.com and using promo code FTL20 when you check out at their Eventbrite ticketing system. That's lifetimeliberty.com, code FTL20, and you can get more information about their conference. You can follow them on Twitter at the handle @LibertyIOL. That stands for Liberty in Your Lifetime. And again, their website, lifetimeliberty.com, code FTL20 to save 20%. There have been clips coming out from this bureaucrat who, it's not the redhead. Remember, there was the redhead for a while that was the spokes-bureaucrat. Yeah, and now there's a new girl, Jean-Pierre, I guess is her name. Maybe that's her last name.
Sorry, I think it's pronounced Pisucky.
They're both awful. And this one is, she does her job, right? Which is to cover for the state, to whitewash things,
I'm entirely certain that you cannot be less than awful when your job is to speak for the state.
Yeah, to distract people and to just straight up lie. So here is their set of lies, which in regards to recession, there's a gentleman who's questioning, somebody's asking the right questions from the audience at the press conference here at the White House. So here's what it says.
Where we are today.
If things are going so great, though, then why is it the White House officials are trying to redefine
recession.
No, we're not redefining recession.
If we all understand a recession to be 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth in a row, and then you have White House officials come up here to say, no, that's not what a recession is. It's something else. How is that not redefining recession?
Because that's not the definition. That is not the definition.
Brian Deese said in 2008, of course, economists have a technical definition, which is of a recession, which is 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth.
I can tell you this.
Yesterday he said 2 negative quarters of GDP growth is not the technical definition of a recession.
It is
What
not.
changed?
It is not.
Why did he say that
it
was?
is not. I can speak to what he said yesterday in front of all of you, which is the last thing that you just repeated. There are many factors. Economic factors and indicators to consider, and I will say that the textbook definition of recession is not 2 negative quarters of GDP.
Now.
Didn't he just read to you out of a textbook?
He cited who said it, but I couldn't make out the name of the person. But it's been said by many people.
It's literally the textbook definition.
Yeah, I think somebody pulled it up from Harvard Business School, and it was right there.
Sometimes they'll throw a modifier in, like, it is defined by most countries as... Yeah. Now, her argument is basically... it's a recession when we tell you it's a recession.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I don't have the rest of this clip. I don't know how long this went on for. It's only 1 minute and 12 seconds. But at least in this clip, the guy doesn't just go right and ask her, okay, well, if that's not the definition of recession, then what are you saying is the definition of recession?
I forget the name of it. It's one of those acronyms, and I really should look into exactly who they are. But there's a government agency, and their job is to determine when a recession has officially occurred.
Is that the National Bureau of Economic Research?
Yep, that sounds right.
Because if you go to the Wikipedia page about recession, which by the way has been locked,
yes,
so you cannot edit.
Even
the Wikipedia
those
page,
with permission.
Which is the whole point of Wikipedia, is to be able to edit things and disagree on what they mean. But according to this, in the United States, a recession is defined by the National Bureau of Economic Research as a, quote, significant decline in economic activity spread across the market, lasting more than a few months, normally visible in real GDP, real income, employment, industrial production, and wholesale retail sales, unquote.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to point out to our listeners that unless this particular spokescritter, who Ian's been playing the clips of, actually comes out and gives you a definition, you know it's all BS. Mm-hmm. Because there's no reason for somebody who has been appointed by the government to come on stage and go in front of cameras and say that, oh, well, that's not the definition, without presenting the actual definition.
So what she would probably respond to that line of questioning with is some political speak version of the argument that it is when the experts say that it's a definition. So like what you were saying, like there's a lot of subjective terms in that. So like how much is a lot? Mm-hmm. How much is widespread?
A significant decline.
What is significant? Well,
whatever they say it is.
Right. I mean, these are subjective terms.
By the way, the next sentence.
The experts, the authoritative sources, will determine when and when it is not a significant and widespread.
The next sentence on the Wikipedia, so right after what is considered the definition by the U.S. National Bureau of Economic Research, the next sentence is, in the United Kingdom, it's defined as negative economic growth for 2 consecutive quarters.
Who was the bureaucrat recently in, was it the Netherlands or something, that they said, like, I will be the definition, or I'll tell you what it means, or something?
Oh, yeah.
You're thinking of the New Zealand Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, I think is her name. She was saying that we are the sole source of truth.
Right. Yeah. That's basically what I'm hearing from this particular spokescritter that you played the clips of.
Mm-hmm. Which, honestly, good. Like, I know you might be like, well, but they're lying to us. Yeah, they're the government. They're always lying to us.
Sure.
So here's my thing. Look, there are 2 basic kinds of people on this. They're the kinds of people who want to trust the government, and good. I'm glad that the government didn't tell them that there's a recession, because they're stupid and they'll freak out. They're terrified and they're not able to think for themselves anyway. So if the government tells them there's a recession, then they'll freak out and start acting stupid and unusual.
Right.
Then there's other people who can figure out for themselves when a recession has occurred.
Just like in all of the movies and television shows, like the super disaster movies, or like when the aliens are coming or whatever, and the government goes, okay, we can't tell them because we don't want to create a panic.
Right.
But you're saying that's kind of what they're doing now is, we're in one, but we're not going to tell them that because we don't want them to freak out. That's what you're saying?
Good.
Okay.
I'm glad. Frankly,
I'm surprised to hear you say that you think it's a good thing that the state is lying to people.
They're always lying to people. I'm glad that they're lying to people in the way that makes them less scared for a change.
I think what he's saying is that he's glad that the common folk aren't freaking the F out.
That's what I'm saying.
I think that's what he's getting at.
That is exactly
He's
what
not
I'm
necessarily glad that the bureaucracy, even exists, much less is lying to people.
Right.
But he's glad that they didn't come out and be like, yep, that's it, we're in a recession, and everybody's freaking.
Well, what would people do differently if they heard that there was a report that said that there was a recession? I mean, we're already seeing people adjusting their spending habits based on inflation, so people are already changing what they're doing in the marketplace. What would they do? What would the average person, not talking about the market people on Wall Street, but what would the average person do if they heard that, it's a recession now?
Well, so all of the things that they're doing for inflation, only to a much bigger degree. They'd start pulling all of their money out of regular things. They'd start hoarding toilet paper. They'd start doing all sorts of very strange things that the market can't actually handle happening all at once.
It's weird because back in 2008 was sort of the beginning of this for me, and then at some point after 2008, there was sort of a gas crunch, and the gas prices went up and spiked for a while. So between those two events, I have already personally adjusted all of the things that I can possibly adjust.
Right.
Like I can't adjust anymore.
As have most of the people who are going to respond intelligently to this situation.
There's more coming up here if you want to weigh in on your thoughts with the fluid definition of recession. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. This is Free Talk Live, the live Saturday show.
Hi, I'm Derek J. I don't want a politician to represent me. To me, government is the idea that one group of people can coerce everyone to comply with an edict or face increasing punishments up to and including death. Despite perhaps the most noble of intentions, the best government services are a far cry from what could be provided for by voluntary interactions. Besides, the people who call themselves the government wage wars and put peaceful people in jail for crimes involving no victims. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
You can help more people hear the message of liberty by joining Free Talk Live's AMPS program on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. And you'll get access to special perks. Visit amps.freetalklive.com, amps.freetalklive.com. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you tonight is Ian,
Bigless Mountaineer,
and the Reverend Captain Kickass.
We're talking about things like inflation and recession, and there was something going around on social media this week saying, oh, Wikipedia changed the definition of recession and they locked the page. Now, it is true the page does appear to be locked. That much appears to be true. But the definition of recession, at least, doesn't appear to have really changed from 2020, and it was we went all the way back in the archive over at archive.org, which has the really handy Wayback Machine where you can put in any website URL that's public, and they will show you what that website looked like in whatever year and month that you choose. We're presuming they've scraped the data from it, and we went all the way back to 2006 just to see what it was like back then, and even then they had this sort of alternative definition of recession. Now, it may change day to day because people are always editing and changing or whatever, but just a random needle drop, if you will, into 2006 showed that they were still trying to say, even back then, that it wasn't just a 2-quarter drop in GDP.
Yeah, I love the way they say it too, though. Contrary to popular belief.
That's what they said in 2006, yeah.
Right, which that's how words work. So a word means
what people
the way
believe
it's used in general speech.
Sure. So I just thought that was interesting, and even today, after defining this sort of nebulous definition, this political definition from the United States, even on today's Wikipedia entry, the next sentence, it does say that in the UK, they do simply define recession as 2 quarterly drops in GDP.
Mm-hmm.
So there it is.
So there are some things about this, and I just happen to have this article from Reason that's discussing this. This is titled Facebook Instagram Posts Flagged as False for Rejecting Biden's Recession Wordplay.
The fact checkers are coming into play now.
Yeah.
So-called.
Meta's third-party fact checkers have flagged as false information posts on Instagram and Facebook accusing the Biden administration of changing the definition of a recession in order to deny that the U.S. economy has entered one. This is yet another reminder that the project of purportedly independent fact-checking on social media is a highly partisan one in which legitimately debatable opinions are passed off as objective truth.
And it's partisan towards the government. If you are not in favor of what the government says, then you're going to get banned. You're going to have your account restricted.
Yeah, and this is the difference between politics and finance. So in finance, you want a fixed, specific definition so that you can have a game plan for when this exact event occurs. Whereas in politics, that's the last thing you want, because then you're responsible for a recession.
So we've talked about all of the things, right? The official determination, and government says, well, we've got to look at it on a holistic level, including the labor market, consumer, blah, blah, blah. All of that kind of stuff. But
Got to look at it on a holistic level, which is why we are burning incense and ringing bells to try and bring the economy back.
Well, people are doing the money dance in their front yard around a circle.
Praying over crystals.
Even if there was this firm definition that we're talking about, they still wouldn't take responsibility for it. They would say, "Oh, Trump did this," or "It's Putin's recession."
Putin's price hike?
But get this.
Not everyone, but almost everyone knows started long before Putin's invasion.
The post in which Ian has played the sample of the audio from has been shared widely and in some cases mocked extensively on social media. Graham Allen, an Instagram personality, posted a video reacting to the post in which he asked Siri to define the term recession. What did Siri respond with? 2 consecutive quarters of negative economic growth.
Interesting.
Wow. Popular belief even among non-general AIs.
So, that's really the gist of this whole thing is that, first of all, if it's false information, then it seems to me like these fact checkers didn't really spring out and become a thing until the truth was being revealed to people.
Yeah.
And so if this is their nature, then it's almost like that old adage about whenever the government says to not do something, you should do it, or if they say to do something, you should do the opposite. It seems to me that applies to these fact checkers as well.
Tends to be the case. Well, and honestly, they are requiring more and more faith in the government as time goes on. One of my favorites, I watched Dr. Anthony Fauci claim, "I never suggested that they shut anything down." It's like, okay, number one, you spent years suggesting that they shut this down, then this down, then this down, then this down. Number two, you suggested to the President of the United States that he shut everything down according to check notes.
It wasn't a suggestion. It was a demand.
So one of two things is happening. Either you just need to have more faith in the CDC, or he's being impersonated.
The fact checkers in the case of both Meta and Instagram are an organization known as
company, by the way.
PolitiFact. Yeah. Yes. They're a fact-checking website run by the Poynter Institute, Poynter, whatever that is. I've never heard of it before. PolitiFact is an official third-party fact-checking apparatus for Meta, the company that owns Facebook and Instagram. This means that PolitiFact is not like any ordinary website that offers a critique of a political narrative. PolitiFact's critiques are enforced by social media platforms.
In related news to this whole discussion, we talked about inflation, of course, the numbers from the official government numbers, and then the shadow stats versions, which are using the old calculations that show 17%.
Speaking of which, just to get another piece of data that's not coming from political bias, there's also Trueflation, which offers a different set of data.
What are they saying?
So according to them, it's at about 9.6 now, but it's actually down recently. So, so instead of just using the old definition and just calculating it according to that, they do their own analytics.
Trueflation. So don't worry, guys. The government has a plan. Not only is the Federal Reserve working to fight inflation, but they also are going to pass a new law they're trying to get through called the Inflation Reduction Act.
Oh, yeah.
You guys heard about this?
I have heard about it.
And it's actually in my show prep, as a matter of fact.
Oh, wonderful.
And in fact, just to reiterate my stance on things the government says, we saw the Patriot Act, nothing patriotic about it. Right. So I imagine that the Inflation Reduction Act will do nothing of the sort and, in fact, probably actually increase inflation.
I bet you're right about that.
You know what we really need to do is put 750 billion dollars. We just need to put that into the economy because there's too much inflation.
Also, it's interesting to note that they put the word act at the end of this. It's the Inflation Reduction Act, as if they're just actors playing a role, and
just like the USA Patriot Act. We will act as if we are USA Patriots by, putting you all in jail.
Yeah.
Now, you said $750 billion. That's because that's what they're proposing in this particular bill.
Yep. Yep.
For spending?
It's $300 billion is supposed to go to reducing our deficit.
Where
and
their
then
deficit?
Where
will they get all of
the
this money
deficit
from?
that we bear, because when they have to spend more money than they make, then they have to print it into existence with the Federal Reserve usually.
Right.
And we bear the brunt of that deficit. So it's ours as far as the weight of it.
Well, anybody
isn't that a small Irish furry creature?
It's a wee bear.
When you say ours, it's anybody holding dollars, right?
Yes.
So anyone around
holding,
the world.
spending, using, getting paid.
Right. So that's what they're talking about here. You mentioned $300 billion. That's going to the deficit reduction. $369 billion for clean energy and climate change.
I thought it was
programs.
46.
It's not going to go to deficit reduction.
Sorry, I lowballed it.
Well, 46, 369. I mean, who's counting?
Something.
You did answer the question, of course, but where will they get all of this money from?
Well, it turns out if we just tax the rich, it's not like they'll change what they're doing to avoid taxes. I mean, rich corporate people would never avoid taxes by changing what they're doing.
They would never move a facility outside of the United States to completely avoid.
Or just build it into the prices for their products and services so that the regular people are the ones who actually pay.
Yeah, and this is really fun because they floated this 15% universal corporate tax. They floated this, like a year ago.
Yeah.
And there were a bunch of countries saying, yeah, there's no chance that we're going to do that ever. But now they're saying, since this is totally going to work, there will just be this universal 15% tax on all corporations. And that's where like half of this money's coming from.
I support the fair tax, and that is zero tax for anyone, anywhere.
Man, they're corporations. Corporations are part of the government. I figure they can do whatever they want to them. And frankly, none of the human beings should ever have gotten involved with corporate structure.
We got more coming up here, and you can join the show if you want. The number 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Of course, Biden caught COVID a second time. Did you guys hear about that?
I did.
Yeah, that's breaking news today. So, in a week.
Isn't he quadruple jabbed?
Yeah, he's had all the jabs.
Weird.
Yeah, there's more coming up here. You can join us on Free Talk Live. Hour 2 is next. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you're helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
I'm a little obsessed with My Magic Mud. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, the founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I didn't even know my teeth were coffee stained. A week's worth of use convinced me, and now I use it every 3 or 4 days. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, and I think it cleans better, too. My Magic Mud's available at most local health food stores, Sprouts, Natural Grocers, CVS, Walmart's Natural Beauty Aisle, but I can get it for you for 20% off with coupon code FTL20 at MyMagicMud.com. FTL20, MyMagicMud.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review. And the week ended without any grain shipments leaving Ukraine's Black Sea ports, despite an agreement struck 1 week ago between Russia and Ukraine that was supposed to allow the resumption of grain exports. The UN said details to secure the safe passage of ships through the waterway were still being finalised on Friday. FSN's Sergio Olmos spent much of the week in Odessa, waiting for the first ships to depart.
President Volodymyr Zelensky said that they're waiting on the UN to give the go-ahead for the ships to pass. It is a very perilous journey. There is mines in this Black Sea planted by the Ukrainian military. Some of them have been removed, but not all of them. For that reason, a Ukrainian government vessel will guide the civilian ships out of the port through the Black Sea to safely navigate the waters.
The week ended in Britain with Foreign Secretary Liz Truss seeming to open up a lead in the race to become the UK's next Prime Minister. She was perceived to have won a series of encounters over the last few days with Rishi Sunak, the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, and she won the influential backing this week of Defence Secretary Ben Wallace.
I think she's authentic. What you see is what you get. She's quite feisty. I've seen her take on other nations and stand up for Britain.
The week ended in the US with tragedy in the state of Kentucky. Flash floods killed at least 16 people, including 6 children. Kentucky's governor is Andy Beshear.
We've got at least 6 dead children. It's even harder for those families and those communities. So keep praying. There's still a lot of people out there, still a lot of people unaccounted for. We're going to do our best to find them all.
Inflation was on the minds of governments and citizens all over the world again this week. The US Federal Reserve raised interest rates by another 75 basis points, setting a record for 2 back-to-back such increases. Fed Chair Jerome Powell.
I do not think the U.S. is currently in a recession. There are just too many areas of the economy that are performing too well.
But by normal yardsticks, America is now recessionary after recording a second successive quarter of negative growth. President Xi Jinping warned President Biden to be clear-eyed about Taiwan. In their first leader-level conversation for 4 months, the Chinese leader repeated his earlier claim that US support for the island means Washington is playing with fire. The World Health Organization declared monkeypox a global health emergency. That took place in the same week the US notched up the largest number of cases worldwide. And the world mourned the British actor Bernard Cribbins this week. He died at the age of 93, just weeks after filming some fresh scenes for Doctor Who. His career spanned 75 years, from The Railway Children to The Wombles, Jackanory to Coronation Street. He was a UK national treasure. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. Investors on Wall Street will be focusing on the health of the US labour market in the coming week. Data last week suggested the US may have entered a recession, but the Biden administration says robust jobs data may prove otherwise. With the preview from FSN's business desk in New York, Will Denzelo.
Last week's gross domestic product figures revealed the US economy contracted 0.9% in the second quarter. Many believe this is a signal that the country's entered a recession, but the White House maintains this isn't the case. Officials are pointing to a strong labour market. As proof, the economy added 372,000 jobs in June, and the unemployment rate remained at 3.6%. July's jobs report is due out on Friday, and analysts will be keen to see whether rising interest rates are starting to hurt hiring. Earnings season continues this week too. Starbucks, Caterpillar, Airbnb and Alibaba are among the companies slated to release quarterly figures.
The presidents of Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia are calling on the United States to increase its military presence in the Baltics. The 3 countries, which are all members of NATO, say they face additional threats due to their geographic proximity to Russia. From FSN's Europe desk in Brussels, Rosie Burchard covered that story.
On Thursday, Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda said decisions made at that Madrid summit are crucial for peace in Europe and for the safety of the entire transatlantic community. Now, all NATO allies take a one-for-all defence pledge to protect each other in case of security threats. The United States says its commitment to that promise, known as Article 5, is ironclad.
In the coming week, we'll keep an eye on any progress in the mooted prisoner swap between Russia and the United States. Secretary of State Antony Blinken heads to Southeast Asia and Africa, and we'll keep a continuing eye on the battle to become the UK's next Prime Minister. And that is the Week in Review from Feature Story News. Simon Marks reporting.
Jared Gilchrist was surfing when he was attacked by a shark that took his leg. Thanks for being with us, big guy.
Thanks, this is tight.
What was going through your mind when you first realized that you were there with a shark all alone in open water?
I felt like a total badass. It bit into my leg and started shaking it back and forth, and at that point I just felt, yes, this is sweet.
I can't imagine what it would have been like to see the teeth sinking into your leg like.
It was sick. At one point I just saw my leg just floating there in the water. It was awesome.
Okay, we're joined now via satellite by Dr. Brian Caddy. What condition was Jared's leg in when you first saw him?
It was in pretty rough shape. The shark had scissored through the muscle, and it was all just like hanging off the bone. It was nuts.
Yeah, I kept touching it. It was slimy as hell.
Yeah, totally. It was insane.
Well, doctor, how do you deal with something like this?
Well, you're never fully prepared for an injury this freaking cool. We just tried to stop the blood loss, and we took a bunch of photos because it's hysterical to freak out the nurses with gnarly shit like this.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live. It's Free Talk Live, and the phones are open here. We're kicking off the second hour of the live Saturday show. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Joining you tonight, it's Ian.
Nicholas Mountaineer.
And Bruce Lee's less attractive brother, Nar.
603-283-6160. We're going to talk
Nar
about
with a silent G.
Nar Lee.
The food crisis. Has it been completely manufactured? Is there a food crisis? Peakless, you've got a story about that on the way here tonight. The phones are open as always. But first, we are going to the phone calls where we have John on the line in Delaware listening to WDOV. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, I would love to know why we have a president that falls off his bicycle, that can't read a teleprompter, that can't hardly even walk without shuffling, tripping over stuff, and that refuses to blink his eyes for 40 seconds.
I haven't watched that thing, but that is creepy.
Crap.
It is
Can
weird.
anybody there explain that to me?
Well, so
he's old.
So again, you just need to have more faith in the government. Just more faith in the government. So no matter who they put forward.
My idea was to get rid of them, actually.
Well, so I mean, for example, he's a Democrat. His primary voter base is Democrats, and their whole thing right now is this wokeness thing, right? So the people who are the perpetrators in the woke ideology, the great Satan, is the white people, the males, the cisgendered, heterosexual. So a straight white old man is the most difficult thing for them to vote for, but as a show of faith, they sure did, didn't they?
Yeah, well, they had. Who else was there? I mean, you got this Kamala Harris who really can't even read a paragraph without repeating herself like 30 times. I don't know who writes her speeches, but they need to be fired too. Now, the problem at hand is, if Joe Biden, we could possibly get him out of there, who do we got? We got Kamala the koala, and then to follow her, we got Nancy Pelosi, man. It's a scary time to live, guys.
They are scary people. There's no doubt about that. Thank you, John, for the call tonight. I appreciate hearing from you. The number is 603-283-6160. He's talking about a video of Joe Biden just staring into a camera, delivering whatever speech he was delivering, and not blinking for quite a long time.
When you get that old, sometimes you just forget.
So
you just forgot to blink. He flaked. He spaced out, man.
There's a theory that he was on some kind of crazy amphetamines or something like that, like some kind of.
You know he's got to be on drugs to speak straight.
Wait. Don't reptiles go for extended periods of time without blinking?
There is that.
Yeah, that's true.
I'm not saying there's a connection. I'm just asking a question.
Well, so first off, I saw this video, and I don't know whether or not it was a deep fake. Number two,
you can't tell these days.
Maybe COVID really did a number on him. You know, I mean, it attacks the nervous system, so
Maybe he, was questionable as to whether or not he was going to fart and was just trying to hold it back and was like, man, if I blink, I think I might let it out,
I've heard he has worse problems when it comes to holding things back.
Yeah, it might have been wet.
There's a rumor he wears diapers.
Depends.
Well, I mean, he's 80 years old, right?
Isn't that
not unheard of.
Isn't that the truth of life? You begin life in diapers and you end life in diapers.
All right, so the number
in
again.
diapers, sleeping at weird times, not having a job.
Couldn't he just get a colostomy bag?
603-283-6160. So, Peakless Mountaineer, you wanted to get into a food crisis. Is there a food crisis? Are we just talking about the price of food, or is there something more to the idea that there's a crisis? Because right now, shelves seem to be okay. There were some times in the last couple of years where the food on the shelf at the grocery store, at least around here, was a little on the light side in certain departments. I haven't been noticing that in recent weeks or months, but what are we talking about when you say food crisis?
Well, and so my perspective on this has always been like, unless things fundamentally change in a way that is just absolutely unforeseeable, there's gonna be food. The question is at what price, what varieties, how available is it going to be? But there's going to be food available. It just might be beyond, certain people's means.
I mean, it's not getting cheaper, that's for sure. I mean, I was looking at the price of chicken the other day, and it's up quite a bit from what it was just a couple of years ago.
I ran through the grocery store to get a couple of things the other day, and I passed by. They had the big signs out in the meat section, beef on sale, right? Mm-hmm. A really nice steak was like $22.
Wow.
I'm like, wow, that's not big. I'm totally not buying one.
Might as well go to a restaurant.
Exactly.
Yeah. Although that's not getting cheaper either.
I mean, it was like a T-bone. It was thick and everything, but like a nice steak, like $20, really?
Wow.
Well, so I mean, one of the big things is just that food is an inescapable purchase. Yep. Like food and energy. You have to eat. You have to get to your job, almost everybody. Mm-hmm. So these are the things where when there is inflation, which there is, like there was a monetary inflation, it has finally come through to be a price inflation. And this is where people see it because it's unavoidable here. So that's a big concern for a lot of people. And it's why they like to say, well, core inflation doesn't include those two things. And that's where most of your inflation is. So, no, we need to look at the core inflation because it's not as volatile. Oh, you mean all the things that are optional? Because food is not optional. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I've got an article here from, I've never heard of them before, Navdanya International. New report, Sowing Hunger, Reaping Profits, a Food Crisis by Design. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, headlines have been dominated by the warnings of risk in global food supply shortages and rising global food prices, all due to the conflict. But according to many international groups, there is currently no risk of global food supply shortages. So why are so many countries now facing an increased risk of food insecurity and, in worst cases, famine? What is crucially being overlooked by most diagnoses of the current food crisis is how the problem does not lie in a lack of supply or a lack of market integration, but instead in how the food system is structured around power. Detailed in this new report by Navdanya International is how, in fact, we have already been facing a food and malnutrition crisis long before the current conflict. From the colonial era, which saw the beginning of extraction and exploitation of small farmers, to the advent of the Green Revolution and the concretizing of the globalized free trade regime, we have seen the deliberate destruction of small farmers and food sovereignty in favor of corporate power.
Okay. Yeah. We've seen that happening.
And that is really worth paying attention to because, like, what has fed people throughout time has been small local farmers. Mm-hmm. And sure, when you have those small local farmers getting more effective and efficient at what they do through technological development, then it frees up people to do other things and the food gets cheaper. But it's always been small local farmers that fed everybody. It hasn't been these giant agro-corporate mega giants that have fed everyone. Like, largely those things have been for extra profits, not for actually feeding the population. And I mean, in circumstances where you're just literally not getting enough calories to survive, that can be helpful. But as far as nutrition goes, it's devastating. Mm-hmm. Like, for nutrition, you need more than soybeans. You need more than wheat. You actually need a varied diet in order to get your vital minerals and vitamins.
Well, and I've not read the story, and they may get to it, of course. You've got for those farmers that are still left that are independent, the corporate goons are trying to wield their ways over them as well with things like the Terminator seeds, where they're these genetically modified seeds that only go for one crop, and then you have to buy more from the supplier rather than just being able to get more seeds from nature.
That's so ridiculous.
Yeah, and food really has everything to do with population control. And not just keeping the numbers correct, but literally controlling the population of the planet. Like, you'll always see these, oh, well, we need to pay attention to how much carbon people are consuming. Oh, you mean carbon-based life forms who expel carbon with every breath and therefore with every activity? Gee, why would you want to be able to control that? So one of the things they always focus on is food, because if you control the food, you control the people.
There's more coming up here. The number is 603-283-6160. We get more from your story about the food crisis. Apparently it's not a shortage issue as much as it is a control issue. We'll get into that deeper. Your calls are welcome, whether it's on this subject or whatever happens to be on your mind. The number is 603-283-6160. You can bring up what you want here on Free Talk Live.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com. There are basically two types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correia, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeene.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeene.com. Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk live Saturday show. You can join us here and bring up whatever you want. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. In the studio tonight, it's Ian,
Beakless Mountaineer,
and Captain Kickass from CaptainKickass.com.
Yeah, buddy, you
That's
got it.
right.
You
I got it.
It's working?
It's up and working right now. It redirects to ReverendCaptainKickass.com. But yeah, it's up and it's working.
All right.
Cost me
nice.
$600 frickin' dollars.
Wow.
It's never been for sale before. Like, that's not true. Like, I went through one of these services through whatever domain provider where like you can pay them to try and negotiate a deal for whoever owns the .com or whatever. And I tried that once. And I think I lost $100 or something trying to do that. And they were like, yeah, no, they don't want to sell it or whatever. And it just redirected to some like Japanese site that like I couldn't decipher because I don't read Japanese writing. And so I was like, well, okay, I guess I'll never get it. And so just on a whim one day, several weeks ago, I guess, I was like, and it's like, this domain might be for sale. So I went through the domain provider I currently use, whose name I won't mention, and like, hey, you know, blah, blah, blah. And it came up with a price. And I'm like, man, I don't want to spend that much. And it was $600. And so I pinged them and they're like, no, sorry, we can't, you know, there's no negotiation on that because it's the seller who wants that much money. And I'm like, can you ask? And they're like, no, not really. And so I went to the current domain provider, or at least at that time, the domain provider who was hosting that site. And I pinged them and I'm like, hey, I see that this might be for sale. Can you guys do better on the price? They're like, nope. Sorry, we can't. So I thought about it for like a week. And I went back and I re-asked both of them and they're like, nope, can't do it. I'm like, So I ponied up the $600.
You know, it could have been worse. If you think about it this way, if you hold the domain for 10 years, it's only $60 a year, right?
Yeah,
you know, that's not bad.
Plan on never giving it up.
Yeah,
and
it's not so bad.
I can't believe that it was actually for sale for once because that's. You know,
how long did the other guy have it
I didn't
for?
know you could actually buy the domain, not pay like a monthly fee to keep the thing.
Well, you still have to pay every year.
Yeah,
it's $10 or $11 a year.
I think I have multiple domains through a domain provider, and so I think all of my domains are like $4, $5, something like that.
Let's go to your phone calls and thoughts. Let's talk to Jerome, listening in South Carolina to WTMA. Go ahead, Jerome.
Hey, West Virginia. That's the state that's blessed us with the great two-faced sellout Joe Manchin, right? Says he wasn't going to vote with the Democrats on the new bill with climate change and everything.
Oh, that was brilliant. Like as a tactical strategy.
And then all of a sudden, he changes. You know why? Because Bernie Sanders called his rotten, no good, two-faced butt out.
Are you talking about the Inflation Reduction Act or something else?
No, there was like a climate change bill they were trying to get passed.
Well, that's basically a climate change bill, from what I understand.
No, they're going to raise taxes. I'm not going to go along with that. And then last week, Bernie Sanders came on and said, oh, he's a fraud. He's a phony. He's a sellout. He's making all this money off of these coal people. Yeah. And then all of a sudden this week, whoop, he changes.
Well, that's what politicians do. They waffle. They change based on various different political factors.
Well,
you can't trust them.
I got to tell you.
Can I ask you about one other thing?
Sure.
Just hold on. I think Peakless had a comment on what you were saying before.
Yeah, no. So this was brilliant. I mean, I don't know whether it was intentional on his part or not, but I mean, as far as politics go, that was the right move to make. So if he had let this go through, then inflation would be way worse than it is right now, because they would have just flooded the economy with another bunch of what was it? Like $1 billion in this thing. So like you throw another $1 billion into the economy, inflation was going to be way worse. worse. The Republicans would be nailing the Democrats to the wall on that. So as far as
we talking about the
green,
some sort of green bill?
Yeah, the Build Back Better was the one that Joe Manchin
was like. You said $1 billion? Or do you mean $1 trillion? I mean, $1 billion's like nothing to those guys.
Oh, sorry. $1 trillion.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this was like another $1 trillion for the Build Back Better deal, and Joe Manchin got in the way of it. And honestly, if you'd thrown another $1 trillion into the economy, the Republicans would be nailing them to the wall right now because the inflation would be way worse than it is, and obviously their fault. Whereas now it's late enough that at least it'll be a few months before the repercussions of this hit.
You read the whole bill and you're an economist, so you would know, right?
I am an economist.
I guarantee you they didn't read the bill.
That's for sure.
Jerome.
I am an economist, and I do know how much it was going to cost.
Let me ask you about one other thing. You know, is Trump, is he a liar or is he senile? He just got caught in another big old giant lie again this week.
Who cares?
He's probably both.
9/11.
Why do you even care about
He's
Trump?
a liar,
Jerome?
definitely.
Well, he's going to run for president.
Whether
again.
he's senile or not, I don't know.
I mean, he's getting old. He's, almost 80 years old.
And I mean, he's been remarkably out of the spotlight for a while.
What's that?
This is the guy they want to run for president. This guy, the election was stolen. They stole it. Hey, has he looked at the two of the Republicans that won, that got put in office? One
Jerome.
was the Electoral College.
Jerome.
Both of them lost the popular vote now.
Jerome, I know you've been listening to this show for, a decade or something? You've been calling the show for like a decade?
It's not a decade.
Not quite.
Okay,
Several
but a
years.
long time, half a decade, something like that. You should know by now that, I'm pretty sure nobody in this studio tonight wants a president, period.
Yeah, is there anyone here who does not want him brought up on war crimes? No one?
Who, Biden?
No, Trump.
No, Trump.
We're discussing Trump. He obviously thinks we're supporters. No, we want him brought up on war crime charges. That would be great.
It's called sedition.
Huh?
It's called sedition. That's
Sedition? No, as far as I can tell, he hasn't done any sedition.
I just want Merrick Garland, either you know what or get off the pot, okay, Merrick? It's time.
Jerome, you are
to throw the
such
hammer
a
down.
political junkie. Jerome loves to call and just drop all these names. Oh, Donald Trump, Merrick Garland.
No, and he always assumes that we're listening to mainstream media like he is, and he doesn't believe us when we're like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Question.
What question?
Is he senile or he's a liar?
Maybe
Which one
both. There's a good chance
Why
of
not
both.
Yeah, if I had to pick between the two, I'd say he's definitely a liar. I don't know if he's senile or not.
Is that the
Same
buy
thing's
one,
true
get
about Joe
one free
Biden.
deal?
Yeah, I was going to say both Trump and Biden are senile old white men.
Yeah, and something to keep in mind, like Trump called for the execution of drug dealers
Recently.
Yeah. So that's a lot of my friends. You think I want him to kill a bunch of my friends? I don't like Trump.
He was going to let him hang as vice president. They said, well, they're going to hang him. Well, that might not be such a bad idea. Thank you, Mr. President.
Who was going to let who hang? I'm sorry, what?
No, Trump was going to let the mob hang by Mike Pence.
The mob?
You remember when they went crazy? Oh, you didn't see the January 6th video?
Because like the idea was that they were going to stop Mike Pence from officiating the Electoral College vote.
They didn't.
Oh, yeah.
They sure didn't.
Thanks for the call,
obscurity.
Jerome. Appreciate it. The number here is 603-283-6160.
I like Jerome as a listener to the show, or as a person anyway.
He's a character.
But there's this thing where people on either the red team or the blue team are only my team is the best team, and it's the only way to fix everything is through my team. And Jerome is definitely one of those.
You can't be against blue unless you're for red.
Yes.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine being those people, and I wonder how many people like that there really are out there. What percentage of America
Apparently
are like Jerome?
Bunch.
The number 603-283-6160. They cannot even hear anything from an alternative viewpoint because they think everybody else is on the other side. More coming up.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agristhosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agrist Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agristhosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agristhosting.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review. And the week ended without any grain shipments leaving Ukraine's Black Sea ports, despite an agreement struck 1 week ago between Russia and Ukraine that was supposed to allow the resumption of grain exports. The UN said details to secure the safe passage of ships through the waterway were still being finalised on Friday. FSN's Sergio Olmos spent much of the week in Odessa, waiting for the first ships to depart.
President Volodymyr Zelensky said that they're waiting on the UN to give the go-ahead for the ships to pass. It is a very perilous journey. There is mines in the Black Sea planted by the Ukrainian military. Some of them have been removed, but not all of them. For that reason, a Ukrainian government vessel will guide the civilian ships out of the port through the Black Sea to safely navigate the waters.
The week ended in Britain with Foreign Secretary Liz Truss seeming to open up a lead in the race to become the UK's next Prime Minister. She was perceived to have won a series of encounters over the last few days with Rishi Sunak, the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, and she won the influential backing this week of Defence Secretary Ben Wallace.
I think she's authentic. What you see is what you get. She's quite feisty. I've seen her take on other nations and stand up for Britain.
The week ended in the US with tragedy in the state of Kentucky. Flash floods killed at least 16 people, including 6 children. Kentucky's governor is Andy Beshear.
We've got at least 6 dead children. It's even harder for those families and those communities. So keep praying. There's still a lot of people out there, still a lot of people unaccounted for. We're going to do our best to find them all.
Inflation was on the minds of governments and citizens all over the world again this week. The US Federal Reserve raised interest rates by another 75 basis points, setting a record for 2 back-to-back such increases. Fed Chair Jerome Powell.
I do not think the U.S. is currently in a recession. There are just too many areas of the economy that are performing too well.
But by normal yardsticks, America is now recessionary after recording a second successive quarter of negative growth. President Xi Jinping warned President Biden to be clear-eyed about Taiwan. In their first leader-level conversation for 4 months, the Chinese leader repeated his earlier claim that US support for the island means Washington is playing with fire. The World Health Organization declared monkeypox a global health emergency. That took place in the same week the US notched up the largest number of cases worldwide. And the world mourned the British actor Bernard Cribbins this week. He died at the age of 93, just weeks after filming some fresh scenes for Doctor Who. His career spans 75 years, from The Railway Children to The Wombles, Jackanory to Coronation Street. He was a UK national treasure. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Phones open. You can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Whether you want to talk about recession, the definition of it, which apparently has been changed recently, the food crisis. We'll get back into that here. Peakless Mountaineer has that story. What is it? Is it a shortage issue? No, it's something else. We'll talk about that. And also want to let you know about our AMPS program. Want to thank Dan Krafzig, who is a Free Talk Live Gold supporter of our AMPS Patreon. It's AMPS, stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. You go to amps.freetalklive.com. It takes you over to our Patreon page. You can learn about it there and then sign up using your debit card, your credit card, your PayPal account, whatever is best for you. And you get some cool benefits from doing that, and you help us get the word out about freedom to more great radio stations all across the country. So if you like what we're doing and you want to help support the show, just go to amps.freetalklive.com. We've got a lot of people all of a sudden who are on the line, so we're going to get to everybody, starting with Ed, listening in Arizona. You're on Free Talk Live, listening to K-Talks. Go ahead, Ed.
Hey, guys. Great show.
What's on your mind?
I just have a comment about back in the pandemic when the food shortage and everything was really happening. I have firsthand knowledge of some of the larger casinos out here that kept pallets and pallets and pallets of food and did not get them to the food banks, and then were ordered to just throw them away.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about some of those types of things happening where people were just disposing of food that otherwise would have gone to places. We saw governments not allowing people to give away their excess to those in need. We saw people, pouring gallons and gallons and gallons of things like milk, down the drain because they couldn't give it away and it couldn't be used and there was no distribution. And that kind of a thing.
Yeah, it turns out making containers for food is not an essential job. Oh, what do you expect to happen when there's nothing to put the food in to get it to people, which means that they can't do the regulations that you told them they have to do?
I'm curious what your firsthand knowledge is, though.
These were held in their refrigerant systems. This was not food that was just, all of it was just left out for the elements. This was all good food. And they did not get it to the food banks. They just left it set and then were ordered to just throw it out. They didn't
who ordered these casinos to toss out this food?
Well, they're tribal casinos for number one. So they have their own set of rules. And I knew somebody that worked there that was all part of it and was some of the people that were ordered to just dump the pallets of food out.
So ordered by their tribal government to dump it out?
Higher ups. Wherever that may come from.
Was that because, I'm just speculating here, was that because the casinos were closed due to the COVID restrictions and so the food just got too old?
That, I don't know the whole story on it, but I just know for 100% certain that this person I knew was ordered to throw all that food, and a lot of times I was told that it was perfectly good food, that there was not even an effort made to contact the food banks to tell them that there was surplus food waiting for them. For them to send their own.
Right. And when they would do that, they would send trucks over or whatever. And yeah, you're right. That's absolutely insane.
I wonder if there was an issue with being past its expiration date.
Not with food banks usually. They seem to have the rules are bent at food banks, basically. You can donate, I believe you can donate expired food to them, and it's just sort of like one of those things like, well, a can that's past its best buy date. I guess there's a difference between expiration and best buy, right? So you buy canned food, it says best buy on it, but that stuff can sit on a shelf for another decade or two or three or whatever, and you can still eat it.
A lot of that's just really arbitrary.
Yeah.
I mean, the criteria that they make their decisions on what that date is pretty darn arbitrary.
Thank you, Ed, for the call. I appreciate you sharing that story with us.
I am curious about, during we'll call them the lockdowns, whether or not this sort of occurred on the reservations at the casinos as much as it did everywhere else.
I'll tell you what I'm concerned about with this. So, I wonder how much the tribal governments are getting interwoven with the corporate government structure of the rest of the United States. Because I know that I just saw an article that Canada is now allowing taxation on the lands and peoples of their indigenous tribes. So, I really start to, because I know that there's been a huge effort to meld the state with various major religious leaders, so that they all move and talk lockstep with the CDC guidelines and all of that stuff. So I really do wonder how much the tribal governments are starting to get in bed with the very worst actors in the world.
Let's go on here. We got Scott on the line in Michigan listening to WMIQ and Iron Mountain. Go ahead, Scott. Scott.
Scott's a Youper.
In Michigan. Going once. Scott in Michigan going twice.
For those who don't know what a Youper is, that's a Upper Peninsula.
Let's go on to Robert in South Carolina listening to WTMA. Go ahead, Robert.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much for taking my call.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that, a lot of these problems can be solved.
Wait. Let me guess. They don't happen in Germany, right? A lot of these problems don't happen in Germany because Germany's so much better.
I'll tell you something. Yes. Germans have a lot of brilliant minds behind the scenes. Yes, absolutely. I know some of the people who are behind the scenes in Germany who
Deutschland über alles, right, Robert?
They're smart, they're clever, and they're responsible. They take personal responsibility for everything.
Did you hear that the Germans are now cutting back? There's mandates on them cutting back energy consumption because the Russians are cutting back the oil gas supply.
Absolutely,
to them.
Absolutely, they cut down 15%, and they're storing that. Absolutely, the Germans will survive anything.
Well, I bet they're going to have a huge population reduction this winter.
Are they cockroaches? The Germans will survive anything.
Yes, absolutely. They'll
Wait, did you say they're absolutely cockroaches?
That's what he said.
Germans will survive a ton of cockroaches if it's a matter of principle.
Are you saying, just want to clarify something, are you saying Germans are superior to the rest of the world?
I don't compare Germans with other people because
you do every time you call into this show.
They are incomparably superior. Right, Robert?
I'm just telling you what Germans are like. I have both citizenships myself, okay? So I am German as well, okay?
And that makes you superior through greater government.
I can tell you that I heard it this morning that in Hanover the hot water went out, okay? But I can tell you, that before I would buy Soviet or Russian oil and gas, I would take 1 million cold showers, and I hate cold showers, before I would buy any of their gas, okay? Let me give you that for principle.
Why don't you take cold showers now, just to show your solidarity?
I would be glad to take cold showers if it would stop the war, for sure.
Do you drive a Volkswagen?
I ride a bicycle, okay? High-performance bicycle.
Is it a German bicycle?
No, it's actually not. It's actually an Italian bicycle.
Oh.
Traitor.
No, I'm over half Italian.
Oh, it's totally fine then.
Wait, I thought you were...
What was the point of your call? Were you just calling to pump up the Germans?
No, not at all. You brought that up. Actually, what I was trying to call in about actually is Jerome. Jerome is a perfect example of why it's incumbent upon the rest of us to make sure that children get a proper education in history, geography, sociology, psychology, and all the factors that go into government so that when they grow up to be adults, they know what.
It is important that people get a proper education. And guess who delivers the worst education worldwide?
The government.
Exactly.
Thank you for the call, Robert. Robert ought to call up Jerome and, go out and have drinks or whatever. I'm sure they'd have a good time.
Put a microphone in between those two.
603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Phones are open here, as always. You can bring up whatever is on your mind. Take control of the airwaves here in the live Saturday edition of Free Talk Live. You can join us online anytime at freetalklive.com. More coming up.
When every single dollar matters, think technology. I'm Holland Cook with Inflation Hacks. Ink cartridges for your printer are so expensive that office supply stores lock them up. Those Cartridge World refills work just fine. And even the office superstores will give you store credit for recycling used toner cartridges. About the extended warranty when you make a major purchase, every tech expert I've talked to says it's usually useless, pure profit, and the salesperson might be getting a bonus if you go for it. And why spend for software when you can use free online Microsoft Office? Programs like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. And there are lots of free apps and Google Docs, too. How are you coping? Post your inflation hacks at andyoucanquoteme.com.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
Are you tired of your taxes funding endless occupations around the world? Antiwar.com is run by people who understand that wars abroad become wars at home, wars on our freedoms. Antiwar.com is dedicated to bringing you the latest in news, views, interviews, and reviews from the top movers and shakers in the anti-occupation movement. Antiwar.com has it all, from thorough foreign policy analysis to interviews with whistleblowers who used to run the military-industrial complex. Anti-war, pro-free market. That's antiwar.com.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It is Free Talk Live, live Saturday show continuing here. The number for you if you want to join us at 603-283-6160. And you can join us online anytime you want at freetalklive.com. If you're tired of all the fact checkers and the mandates and the account restrictions, you can join our social media platform over at social.freetalklive.com, where you have much more freedom to express yourself because we run the server. It is not some big tech mega corporate situation. Well, you know, we set the rules, and there really aren't many rules. Just don't spam our server with a bunch of crap, and you should be okay. So head over to social.freetalklive.com. You can sign up there, and you can interact with other Free Talk Live listeners and some of the hosts of the show. Once again, that's social.freetalklive.com. Let's go to your calls and thoughts, and we'll continue with this food crisis story that Peakless Mountaineer brought in to share with us here tonight. What is the so-called food crisis? We'll dig deeper on that one, but first, Keith is on the line listening in the Daytona Beach area to WNDB in Florida. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, I've just been listening to you guys for a few months, and I don't know. I kind of disagree with most everything you say. I like, for example, I believe you believe in open borders, a free flow migration, free flow of people.
Well, we believe in private borders.
Private borders, what does that mean?
So, like, if I have mixed my labor with nature, or if I have traded something that I've mixed my labor with nature to acquire for something, then that's my property. Right. And if it's my property, then I get to use it whatever way I want. So if, for example, I build a road and I don't want you driving on it, then you can't drive on it. If I build a fence, you're not allowed to touch my fence without my permission. So what would happen in a situation like that, they could go wherever they were wanted by the people whose property it was. And if it's nature, then if it's untouched nature, then it doesn't belong to anyone, so they can go there and mix their labor with it as they will.
And homestead it.
Right, absolutely. But where nature has been altered through human effort, they're allowed to go where they have permission of those who own it.
To further expand on that, I personally do not recognize the imaginary borders that nations have drawn on the maps.
I don't recognize nations. I think most of us would agree on this show that the idea of the government needs to be abolished.
Well, I think that's extremely, extremely naive. I think the human experiment has been going on for a long time. And I think the reasons we have borders is because people generally don't like each other, okay? And your hippie ideal to me, this utopian ideal, of everybody living together, just, I mean, it's so ridiculous because I don't know.
I don't suggest that everyone live together.
Yeah, and in
some
fact,
people get along with each other, some people don't.
And in fact, what's utopian is the idea. Hang on. What's utopian is the idea that having a nation and closing your borders off, it will result in a better society for everyone. It's just not true.
Well, I think with your logic, say someone, if they wanted to, they can just migrate to your backyard and start living there.
No.
You didn't listen, did you?
No.
Yes.
You didn't listen.
Do you believe that my backyard is in a state of nature, that I've never mixed my labor with it? You think I don't cut my grass?
You act like you're the only one who, like, there's just so much land out there and people can just do that, start doing that. There's been people living on this.
Look, wherever the land hasn't been altered, you can do that.
Been always okay, but that's not the way it works. And I would say the framers of the Constitution are way smarter than you, and they believe in limited government. And
what do you think the limits should be on government?
They believed in giving the people.
Keith, what do you think since you love the Founding Fathers so much, what do you think the limits should be on government?
Well, I think, first off, national security, number one.
That's not a limit.
Okay. And then number two, environmental. I don't trust anybody like you.
Okay, so the environmental problem is actually a problem of government. Environmental concerns would have been solved if the courts in England...
I'm putting him on hold because he's obviously not listening. He just wants to keep talking. What were you going to say there?
Yeah, the environmental issue, and this is a valid concern, but the environmental issue would have been solved a long time ago, except that we inherited this tradition of our court system from England. And in England, they decided during the Industrial Revolution that no environmental concerns would be heard in court because these are for the good of the nation. Now, that's absolutely patently absurd, and in any free market system of courts, that would never fly, because if you have harmed me, then you owe me. It's just that simple.
And that includes harming your property.
That includes harming my property. That includes putting a bunch of smoke into my lungs. That includes dumping a bunch of toxic waste in the place where I get my water from.
Keith?
Yes. All right, you put me on hold.
Well, yeah, because you wouldn't stop talking, and now you're back. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, you don't, just because I think you don't stop talking. It's like you're the one who's cutting people off. Because you have an
we don't cut people off here, generally.
Ideology and a talking point that I hear every time. And it has nothing to do with reality. Okay?
So let me see if I'm following what you're saying before, though. You think the government should do
live in a country with
national
rivers
security,
and waters and air, and if someone has a chicken farm in Delaware and pollutes the Chesapeake Bay, it's everybody's problem. It's not the state. It's not your community's problem, because rivers, streams, and water travel throughout different states.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
They sure do.
Right, that would mean every single person.
Are you familiar with the idea of an easement?
I do not trust human beings to not pollute the water.
Wait a minute. You don't trust human beings, but you trust people that run the government?
So, and here's the thing. So, like, as far as polluting the water...
I want him to answer the question. Go ahead, Keith.
yes, I do believe to a certain extent. I believe the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act has cleaned up the air in this country.
No, you didn't answer my question. Why do you,
Well, no,
if you
I
say
am
you don't
answering
trust
your
human
question.
beings, why would you trust them with
I do-
power?
I'm talking about the government, what the government has done.
The government is human
Okay?
beings.
Listen, I'm talking about the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act that was passed.
He clearly has no interest in responding to your
The
question.
environment. And if you don't believe that, go look it up.
Go look at the U.S. military and tell me they help the environment. They are the largest polluter in the United States.
Fact.
Yeah, the reason that they get away with it is that every single international treaty that governs pollution exempts the military from every one of its stipulations. And the thing is, like, oh, well, we need to have a limited government. The government has never been limited. So if you take a look at the Constitution, they don't abide by it. They have never in any way been limited. They have always expanded beyond what their powers
I mean, even the Constitution was written to have no standing army, but there it is.
Right.
What do you say to that, Keith?
I say that you guys have this talking point that is not based in reality. That's why I think you're ridiculous.
You didn't even answer my question.
Well, no.
Why can't you just address what we're talking about? You just seem to want to go off on a lecture. Can we have a conversation? In order to have a conversation, you have to have a question and an answer.
No, I'm giving you an answer why government, to a certain extent, is helpful with the environment.
Okay, but you also said you support national security. I presume that would include the U.S. military. And I'm pointing out to you that your precious Constitution that you brought up earlier about the brilliant founding fathers, that was what you said, Keith. They wrote in that Constitution that there should be no standing army. And do you support a standing army?
Of course I do.
Okay, well then you're full of it. Stop acting like you lionize these people that wrote the Constitution.
The framers of the Constitution are so much smarter than you, and they said we should not have a standing army.
That's right.
Here you go, Keith. But whether the Constitution really be one thing or another, this much is certain, that it has either authorized such a government as we have had, or has been powerless to prevent it. In either case, it is unfit to exist.
Your final thoughts on that, Keith? Go ahead.
Well, all right. As far as the standing army, I think that if the country had people like you in charge, I think we would be invaded within 2 weeks.
Well, luckily for you, we don't want to be in charge.
Yeah, we don't want to have a government. If the people like us got into the government, they would hopefully shut it down so we can actually have freedom again. Thank you for the call, Keith.
I'd like to address the concern, though. If people like you were in charge, we'd be invaded. If people like me were in charge, to put this in something that you can comprehend, we wouldn't end security. We would privatize it. Like, there wouldn't be no security for anybody ever. We would have competing companies that offer security that individuals can choose between. And the ones who actually do what they say they're going to do keep getting paid. Whereas what we have now is a monopoly. And guess what? Monopolies don't actually work.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, in the absence of the state, there would still be somebody who wants to get protection services, and probably be a lot of people that want protection services. And so what you're saying is the market would provide those things.
Yeah, and a lot of people who want to provide those services for the right price.
Through competition and hopefully the excellence that results from that.
If it has value, the market will provide.
All right, there's more coming up here. We got time for you. Whole hour continuing here on Free Talk Live, the live Saturday episode. The number, if you want to join us, 603-283-6160. You can bring up what you want on Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review. And the week ended without any grain shipments leaving Ukraine's Black Sea ports, despite an agreement struck 1 week ago between Russia and Ukraine that was supposed to allow the resumption of grain exports. The UN said details to secure the safe passage of ships through the waterway were still being finalized on Friday. FSN's Sergio Olmos spent much of the week in Odessa, waiting for the first ships to depart.
President Volodymyr Zelensky said that they're waiting on the UN to give the go-ahead for the ships to pass. It is a very perilous journey. There is mines in this Black Sea planted by the Ukrainian military. Some of them have been removed, but not all of them. For that reason, a Ukrainian government vessel will guide the civilian ships out of the port through the Black Sea to safely navigate the waters.
The week ended in Britain with Foreign Secretary Liz Truss seeming to open up a lead in the race to become the UK's next Prime Minister. She was perceived to have won a series of encounters over the last few days with Rishi Sunak, the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, and she won the influential backing this week of Defence Secretary Ben Wallace.
I think she's authentic. What you see is what you get. She's quite feisty. I've seen her take on other nations and stand up for Britain.
The week ended in the US with tragedy in the state of Kentucky. Flash floods killed at least 16 people, including 6 children. Kentucky's governor is Andy Beshear.
We've got at least 6 dead children. It's even harder for those families and those communities. So keep praying. There's still a lot of people out there, still a lot of people unaccounted for. We're going to do our best to find them all.
Inflation was on the minds of governments and citizens all over the world again this week. The US Federal Reserve raised interest rates by another 75 basis points, setting a record for 2 back-to-back such increases. Fed Chair Jerome Powell.
I do not think the U.S. is currently in a recession. There are just too many areas of the economy that are performing too well.
But by normal yardsticks, America is now recessionary after recording a second successive quarter of negative growth. President Xi Jinping warned President Biden to be clear-eyed about Taiwan. In their first leader-level conversation for 4 months, the Chinese leader repeated his earlier claim that US support for the island means Washington is playing with fire. The World Health Organization declared monkeypox a global health emergency. That took place in the same week the US notched up the largest number of cases worldwide. And the world mourned the British actor Bernard Cribbins this week. He died at the age of 93, just weeks after filming some fresh scenes for Doctor Who. His career spans 75 years, from The Railway Children to The Wombles, Jackanory to Coronation Street. He was a UK national treasure. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. Investors on Wall Street will be focusing on the health of the US labour market in the coming week. Data last week suggested the US may have entered a recession, but the Biden administration says robust jobs data may prove otherwise. With the preview from FSN's business desk in New York, Will Denzelo.
Last week's gross domestic product figures revealed the US economy contracted 0.9% in the second quarter. Many believe this is a signal that the country's entered a recession, but the White House maintains this isn't the case. Officials are pointing to a strong labour market. As proof, the economy added 372,000 jobs in June, and the unemployment rate remained at 3.6%. July's jobs report is due out on Friday, and analysts will be keen to see whether rising interest rates are starting to hurt hiring. Earnings season continues this week too. Starbucks, Caterpillar, Airbnb and Alibaba are among the companies slated to release quarterly figures.
The presidents of Lithuania, Latvia and Estonia are calling on the United States to increase its military presence in the Baltics. The three countries, which are all members of NATO, say they face additional threats due to their geographic proximity to Russia. From FSN's Europe desk in Brussels, Rosie Burchard covered that story.
On Thursday, Lithuanian President Gitanas Nausėda said decisions made at that Madrid summit are crucial for peace in Europe and for the safety of the entire transatlantic community. Now, all NATO allies take a one-for-all defence pledge to protect each other in case of security threats. The United States says its commitment to that promise, known as Article 5, is ironclad.
In the coming week, we'll keep an eye on any progress in the mooted prisoner swap between Russia and the United States. Secretary of State Antony Blinken heads to Southeast Asia and Africa, and we'll keep a continuing eye on the battle to become the UK's next Prime Minister. And that is the Week in Review from Feature Story News. Simon Marks reporting.
A job applicant totally nails an interview with the person who will make his life a living hell for the next 5 years. And adjusting several sliders on a recording studio's mixing console pays off big time. This is the Onion Week in Review. This week, a study published by researchers at Johns Hopkins University revealed a direct correlation between breastfeeding and knowing exactly what's best for other people at all times. Overwhelming evidence indicated that the moment mothers begin breastfeeding, they develop a highly honed sense of what is wrong with others' approach to life, and were able to loudly enumerate those faults with total confidence in their accuracy. Researchers noted that the practice greatly boosted a young mother's immunity to the viewpoints of others. And in this week's Tech Report, a startup is very casual about its dress code and benefits. In other news, the Secretary of Interior says knocking down the Rocky Mountains could really open up the nation. And a woman is not going to let her husband of 60 years drag her into death at the same time.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live. It's Free Talk Live. Phones are open here, and you can join us. We're kicking off the third hour of the show. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. Earlier tonight, we got into a discussion about supposed food crisis, and Peakless Mountaineer had that story. We're going to dig deeper into that when we get the chance. But a lot of phone calls came in, and we take calls here. That's what we do. It's open phones every night. 603-283-6160. Joining you here in the studio, it's Ian.
Peakless Mountaineer.
And the Reverend Captain Kickass.
You can join us online anytime you want. Just head over to freetalklive.com and enjoy the features that we have waiting for you there. Once again, that is freetalklive.com. Back to the phones and to your calls and thoughts. We've got David in New Mexico. David, you're on Free Talk Live. Go ahead.
Yeah, violent judges lying about whether or not they're violent. So I've been citing Joe Monahan's New Mexico.blogspot.com. Joe's a 30-year professional news and politics guy in New Mexico, and he has written several articles in his blog years ago about these various judges and the shenanigans that they were up to. And the one of the sentences in one of the two articles is a quote of Judge Tommy Jewell, who is married to Judge Angela Jewell, who illegally trafficked my children, as I proved in the New Mexico Court of Appeals with a unanimous decision. One of the quotes from Tommy Jewell is, he was accused of domestic violence. He was charged with domestic violence against the woman he was having an affair on his wife who sat my case less than a year after her husband, Judge Tommy Jewell, cheated on her. And my allegation is that her mental state, being a scorned woman where her judge husband cheated on his judge wife, my judge, had an influence on how she treated men in her courtroom. Now, one quote from Tommy Jewell in that blog by Joe Monahan was, "I have never been a violent person." And and that's paraphrased. I don't have the direct quote in front of me.
He's obviously excusing all the times he sent innocent people behind bars by using men with guns to force them there.
Just by being a judge makes
Right.
him a violent person.
That's right.
Right, and I happen to have a direct contact with Tommy Jewell where he was violent to me. Tommy Jewell committed an assault to the legal standard against me in a barbershop, a school barbershop called A Better You, owned by Patrick, and Patrick witnessed Tommy Jewell, Judge Tommy Jewell, who says he's never been a violent person. When I asked him about my case, he got up out of his chair, walked clear across the room, put his face about 1.5 feet from my face, and with an angry tone and look on his face, on top of getting up, coming across the room, and getting in my face, said, "What do you want me to do about it?" And that is an assault, Tommy Jewell.
No.
Because when you, pardon?
That's not an assault.
Yes, it is. Go ahead and define
It's not a
assault
battery.
under the law.
Yeah, so swinging on you is assault.
That's
Hitting
a
you
battery.
is a battery.
Oh, really?
No,
Yeah, if
you're
you swing on someone, that's an assault. But if you actually
You're wrong,
make contact,
Genius,
then
that's
it's assault
battery.
and battery.
No, you're an assault. Assault is simply putting someone in fear. And so if I walk across, if this guy is twice as my size, and I walk across the room to somebody who's half my size and get in my face, and in that guy's face as I described, that's an assault because it's an attempt to intimidate by putting someone in fear. Your behavior is putting somebody else in fear legitimately. That is assault.
I mean, if that's accurate, then
I think he's right about that.
If that's accurate, then David, you're guilty of assaulting our listeners on occasion because some of them are in fear of you calling.
Captain, it's so funny.
That was funny. Thanks for the call tonight. I think he is right, though. Definition, according to the legal dictionary at thefreedictionary.com, is at common law, at least, an intentional act by one person that creates an apprehension in another of an imminent, harmful, or offensive contact. So certainly a swing would qualify as an assault, but I think he's got an argument that just simply
being 1.5 feet away from someone doesn't. I mean, I guess it's subjective.
just intimidating somebody or whatever could be considered an assault.
Yeah, I mean that's
pretty gray.
Let's continue here, Sarah.
I would probably not continue. I would question the services of a court that upheld that as assault.
Let's go to Sarah. She's in New Mexico as well. Go ahead, Sarah. Sarah in New Mexico, going once. Sarah in New Mexico, going twice.
Okay, Sarah.
Okay. All right. So number here 603-283-6160. Peakless Mountaineer, you were telling us about this food crisis and the story you had shared with us, or began to share with us. Where was it from?
This is from.
I'd never heard of this group.
Yeah,
before.
neither had I. Navdanya International.
They did a report, and they determined that the food crisis isn't about a lack of food. There's plenty of food out there, but it is about the fact that it has been corporatized over decades.
I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to point out when we began talking about this in a previous segment, especially with the caller who called in, there is more than enough food on planet Earth for all of the human beings.
Without a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I wanted to get.
Yeah, that's why a bunch of it gets thrown away a lot. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as they put it, it is how the food system is structured around power,
right?
Rather than being a shortage of food or even an inability to get it where it needs to go.
Oh, and guess what the folks over at the World Economic Forum want to do? Centralize the food control system even further.
Oh, of course, so they can get all the good stuff and leave all the scraps for everybody else.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure they have nothing but your best intentions at heart. It's why they let everyone into their meetings and not just someone who pays $1 million. Oh, wait.
Well, they do show their meetings publicly, or at least some of them. I don't know if it's all of them.
Yeah, this is what you call an open conspiracy.
We know the last thing they're going to do is allow the market to decide.
No, these people are central planners. So what else do we need to know, Peakless?
Let's see. So to recap the last bit of the last paragraph, we have seen deliberate destruction of small farmers and food sovereignty in favor of corporate power. Therefore, it is no coincidence that today we are witnessing the third major food crisis in the last 15 years. What the Russian-Ukrainian conflict has once again laid bare is just how fragile globalized food systems are. The current globalized industrial agri-food system is a food system that creates hunger by design. Worst of all, international institutions, governments, and corporate actors are using the current crisis, as they have used every crisis, to further consolidate this failed model. False solutions and redundant calls for failed approaches abound in headlines and international responses. The current crisis should be a wake-up call to the imperative of building resilience in food systems through agroecology, local food chains, and by strengthening small farmers.
Well, one of the nice things about living in New Hampshire is that there's some study that was done, and I don't know what it was called, but it was essentially the localvore, as they call it, study, LOCAVORE, people who are interested in acquiring their food from local sources or getting it as locally as possible. And I think the 3 states that were the top 3 of all the 50 states of most local for, like, the most farmers markets, the most people per capita or whatever that are interested in buying their food from local sources, I believe is how they calculated these numbers. It was, and I'm not sure which order, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. These 3 states up here, northern New England, are most localvore places. And here, I don't know if it's every town in New Hampshire, but it's certainly like the cities and bigger towns. There's farmers markets all over the place up here. There's one that happens twice a week here in Keene.
Yeah, and I got to say, farmers markets are one of the most beautiful things that exist in the world today.
It is a good example of a true market, right? As near as we can get to one anyway, where it's mostly free of regulation. You're not going to see a whole bunch of policing. You're not going to see a whole bunch of businesses, calling the cops on other businesses, that kind of thing. It's a very nice place to go.
I've never found a Monsanto representative at any farmer's market.
That's probably true. So there's more, I imagine, to your story.
Just a bit, yeah.
We'll share that coming up here in a bit. And if you want to jump in, you can. The number is 603-283-6160, and you can take control of the airwaves here on this live Saturday episode of Free Talk Live. Visit us online anytime at freetalklive.com. More coming up.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com. There are basically 2 types of advertising: direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, Mark at freetalklive.com.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com. My name is Angel Rach. I'm a mother of 2 teenage children, and I fought all the way to the Supreme Court for the right to use the medicine that saved my life. I've been permanently disabled for 10 years, with an inoperable brain tumor, wasting syndrome, and several other serious conditions. For 4 years, I was in a wheelchair, in so much pain, I couldn't even hug my kids. The hardest part was looking in their eyes and seeing how much they were suffering because of my medical condition. The medicine that gave me my life back and gave my kids their mom back was cannabis, also known as medical marijuana. With medical marijuana, I can walk, maintain my weight, and I can be a mom. Without it, my doctors believe that I would die. To learn more about medical marijuana, contact Marijuana Policy Project at 1-877-JOIN-MPP or on the web at mpp.org.
If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and you can join us here. The number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160.
He says with a question?
Yeah, well, I'm looking here. I was looking up the locavore stuff that we were talking about just a moment ago.
Like, I've never heard you be unsure of our phone number before.
No, what was confusing to me is that New Hampshire, according to strollingoftheheifers.com.
Wait, isn't that Mall Walkers?
Strolling of the Heifers. Is this an off-Broadway production of Silence of the Lambs?
I'm showing my age by mentioning Mall Walkers, but anybody over, 35 might get that.
Yeah, I don't know what year it was that New Hampshire was in the top 3, but at least according to their 2019 index, it doesn't appear they've done one since 2019. Okay, so 2015, New Hampshire was number 3 on their rankings, and then in 2019 they're down to 15 or 14 or something.
Man,
so I don't know what happened.
Ooh.
I don't
best get to farming here.
I don't know what happened, but I don't like it.
I'll tell you what. I mean, I haven't noticed any less activity in New Hampshire as far as local farms.
There is one farm that I buy meat from because I like what they do and the people that are involved. And I'm able to barter in my preferred method with them. I am, by definition, one of these locavores, because I am very interested in the idea of decentralizing all of our food production. And I think we were talking about it during the break. I believe Generation X might be the first generation of, at least in the United States of America, of people where food production is not a part of your daily household tasks. Right?
Yeah,
So
that's true.
I remember my grandparents, they did all of the food production. They had meat grinders. They would, do their own butchering. If they went out and got a deer, they'd hang it in the garage, butcher it themselves, gut it themselves, bleed it themselves, package it, freeze it, all that kind of stuff. You might even get here's some venison steaks for Christmas or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Grandma would give away, preserves or jams or jellies that she made out of the wild fruits that grew in the back 40 of their property and that kind of a thing. So I've witnessed decentralized food production because oftentimes they would trade with their friends who grew stuff or made stuff better. Mary's plum jam is way better, and Naomi's peach jam is way better. That kind of a thing. They had opinions on each other's ability to produce food.
A reputation system.
A reputation system. And so because if you excelled at one thing that everybody liked, then you knew you would just make a little bit more of that and trade that with so that they could get something that they liked from somebody else and that kind of a thing.
So maybe Mary makes some extra peach jam this year because they liked it so much last year.
Exactly. And that's how you get diversity in your decentralized food production. So it's entirely possible, and in fact was done throughout, I want to say, probably up until the end of the Vietnam War, is my guess.
All right, I want to go to the phones here. We got George on the line in Myrtle Beach listening to WRNN FM. Go ahead, George.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to bounce up what you just said, the local wars. That's wonderful expression. That's how all of our relatives, first-generation American, from Germany. My brother is German. He has his German citizenship, fought in Vietnam. And getting your own food from your own land and all that, that's how they survived the hyperinflation of the 1920s. World War II, that's how they survived.
Yep. By
growing their own, food sources, and I do a lot of that myself today. And when they emigrated in the 60s and 70s, my German relatives to America, they grew their own items and produce. And I wanted to also state quite short that two previous callers, Jerome, I believe he's from Charleston. I've heard him talk for like 10 years on sports talk radio. He likes to hear his own voice talk a whole lot. And,
he's been banned, by the way, from every local show on our affiliate down there in Charleston. The program director was telling me about it.
So he is from Charleston?
Yeah, he calls from Charleston in South Carolina.
Oh, gosh, yeah. I knew that voice.
Yep.
And the other gentleman, he doesn't know what he's talking about. When he did his op-ed on Germans, I still have a lot of relatives over there. And,
Robert is always calling in to say how much better Germany is because it has more government.
No. Well, he's totally, it's just incorrect. My brother, who is as German as they can be, his father was a Nazi lieutenant. He's my half-brother. But he said, George, don't ever buy a German car. You're paying for their socialism. And I mean, it's not all that in a bag of chips. What's over there?
Well, the guy that you're referring to, Robert, is a regular caller to the show, and he just loves himself government and centralized control and command and control, and he just uses Germany as all of his excuses for why the U.S. government should be even bigger and more controlling. Hey, George, anything else you want to share?
Last mini tale. I was over in Germany in '87, and I got to witness firsthand between communism and capitalism, because I was at Checkpoint Charlie for 2 days. I visited, I saw, it was like a lab experiment, a petri dish between the two governments, and what a contrast. And I was never so happy to be back in a non-communist socialist.
Well, the U.S. is still a socialist country, just maybe not as bad off as some of the ones in Europe. Thank you, George, for the call tonight. I appreciate it.
Well, I was in a conversation earlier today, and it was about the word capitalist, and it's the same problem with the word communist. Now, these words mean literally opposite things to different people. So, I mean, I believe what he's talking about is private property versus not private property, a market versus non-market. And yeah, it makes all the difference in the world. It really does. But I mean, as Jed is always reminding us, it matters which words we use to describe these things.
Well, under democratic, quote-unquote, democratic socialism, they still allow private ownership. They still allow, quote-unquote, private property in the same way here in the United States. But, of course, we all know what happens when you don't pay the property tax bill. You find out that it's not actually your private property. You're just a glorified renter who has the responsibility of keeping the grass cut and, keeping the building from falling in on itself.
Yeah, they profit from the illusion of private property.
Right.
As long as people believe that, oh, this is my house, it belongs to me, well, then you will produce more.
Right.
Yeah, it turns out very few people in the United States actually even under the legality, the legal definition of property ownership, own their property, most people are simply in the process of buying their property.
Well, you're talking about from the bank.
Correct.
In that case. But
Yes.
even after you pay the bank off, you still don't own it.
Right. So there's a whole bunch of people running around going, yeah, I just bought a house. And then like the bank's winking at them, and then the state's winking at the banks.
Yeah.
You know?
I think there's a meme about that. Out there. We got more coming up, and of course your calls and thoughts. I was looking here at the Locavore index, and I was just comparing because New Hampshire was number 5 in the 2018 index, and then it went down to 16 in 2019. And what it appears is they changed how they're calculating it. There's significant changes to what they're looking at, what they're figuring is the most important numbers, and so they changed it in 2019 to how much local sales per capita. And there's a bunch of other factors apparently in the previous one. So check them out over at strollingoftheheifers.com. Interesting lists nonetheless, worth looking at. There's more coming up. You can join us on Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks with the Week in Review. And the week ended without any grain shipments leaving Ukraine's Black Sea ports, despite an agreement struck 1 week ago between Russia and Ukraine that was supposed to allow the resumption of grain exports. The UN said details to secure the safe passage of ships through the waterway were still being finalized on Friday. FSN's Sergio Olmos spent much of the week in Odessa, waiting for the first ships to depart.
President Volodymyr Zelensky said that they're waiting on the UN to give the go-ahead for the ships to pass. It is a very perilous journey. There is mines in the Black Sea planted by the Ukrainian military. Some of them have been removed, but not all of them. For that reason, a Ukrainian government vessel will guide the civilian ships out of the port through the Black Sea to safely navigate the waters.
The week ended in Britain with Foreign Secretary Liz Truss seeming to open up a lead in the race to become the UK's next Prime Minister. She was perceived to have won a series of encounters over the last few days with Rishi Sunak, the former Chancellor of the Exchequer, and she won the influential backing this week of Defence Secretary Ben Wallace.
I think she's authentic. What you see is what you get. She's quite feisty. I've seen her take on other nations and stand up for Britain.
The week ended in the US with tragedy in the state of Kentucky. Flash floods killed at least 16 people, including 6 children. Kentucky's governor is Andy Beshear.
We've got at least 6 dead children. It's even harder for those families and those communities. So keep praying. There's still a lot of people out there, still a lot of people unaccounted for. We're going to do our best to find them all.
Inflation was on the minds of governments and citizens all over the world again this week. The US Federal Reserve raised interest rates by another 75 basis points, setting a record for 2 back-to-back such increases. Fed Chair Jerome Powell.
I do not think the U.S. is currently in a recession. There are just too many areas of the economy that are performing too well.
But by normal yardsticks, America is now recessionary after recording a second successive quarter of negative growth. President Xi Jinping warned President Biden to be clear-eyed about Taiwan. In their first leader-level conversation for 4 months, the Chinese leader repeated his earlier claim that US support for the island means Washington is playing with fire. The World Health Organization declared monkeypox a global health emergency. That took place in the same week the US notched up the largest number of cases worldwide. And the world mourned the British actor Bernard Cribbins this week. He died at the age of 93, just weeks after filming some fresh scenes for Doctor Who. His career spans 75 years, from The Railway Children to The Wombles, Jack and Ori to Coronation Street. He was a UK national treasure. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. Phones are open here. If you want to join in, the number is 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. You can also call us on our SIP line, which we don't talk about a lot, but it is there for those that want to take the extra time to set it up. Once you get it set up, it takes, some time, maybe 10 minutes or something to get it rolling. But once you get it set up, then it's just a push of a button and you're connected to our system here, and it usually sounds better than a normal phone call. If you want to learn about that, if you're a little more internet inclined, you can go to sip.freetalklive.com. That's sip.freetalklive.com. Ian Peakless Mountaineer and Captain Kickass in the studio. We're going to go back to your calls and thoughts. Jill is on the line in Virginia. Jill, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, the World Economic Forum, WEF, isn't it? It doesn't. I don't think its pronouncements make any more rational sense than the speeches on the WWF.
In fact, they probably make less sense than the WWE.
Yeah, I used to watch WWF for a laugh. Well,
it's funny. Was that all you had to say? Was to compare the WEF to the WWF, which I think they changed their name to World Wrestling Entertainment
because the World Wildlife Foundation sued them successfully.
World Wrestling Federation, whatever.
Who sues someone over an acronym? I mean, for crying out loud.
I think an acronym is when the letters are pronounced like ATF, it would pronounced ATF or something like that.
You don't have to necessarily pronounce them that way. And while we're on the subject of the acronym of the ATF, where is explosives in that? Because they're the...
I thought it was alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
Yeah, you would think that, right? But no, they're the Bureau. Where's the B? They're BATFE is what they are. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives.
I wish they would just disappear. Jill, anything else you want to share?
Well, that's it.
Thanks for the call. Appreciate hearing from you. Let's go on here.
I will say I can't tell the difference between Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum and an actual supervillain.
He is very evil sounding. Let's go to Bob in West Virginia. You're on Free Talk Live, Bob.
Yes, I think we're losing sight of the fact that in farming, it ought to be the free market that chooses the size of each farm.
Absolutely.
And not, let's reduce the size of farms. That's basically choosing winners and losers.
Well, I agree, but
I understand that some people. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, I agree, but I do have to point out how the incentives are for farms to get larger because of regulation.
Oh, yeah, you're probably right in that regard. Regulation has created, let's look at the last thing, the pandemic. All the small businesses were basically closed, and Walmart and Target and these other ones were allowed to stay open.
That's right.
So you had like a 40% reduction in small business over a period of a year and a half, and I agree with that. But I'm just saying that there are some farms, it's called economy of size, where you create more goods, more stuff for the people by sheer size, and it costs less to create it.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
All these
There's nothing wrong with having a big farm, right? For the as you're saying, the economics of making it cheaper to sell your product and get more customers. There's nothing wrong with that. The problem comes in when government picks winners and losers. When you have, and I don't think anyone's touched on this yet, but corporate welfare. By the way, there's a lot of welfare money that's being distributed to some of these corporate farmers.
Yeah.
In
the
order
form
to
of subsidies.
They get paid not to grow anything, for example.
Some do. That's right.
Yeah, which is
You've got
absolute
these,
madness. goodness. And you're right about the market needs to decide this. How big should a farm be? How small? I can't possibly know the answer to that question. No one can. Right. There's too many factors. What we can do is have the market say, okay, well, we will neither subsidize. And so like one of the big issues is if there's a new regulation on a particular kind of farming, like the little guy doesn't have a legal team, but Monsanto sure does. And it's worth it to get a legal team to fight or to get around or get through this regulation if you have 10,000 acres.
Or to write the regulations in many cases.
Bingo.
Well, right now we have the intervention by the government that's making it almost imperative that if you want to make it through these hard times, you have to grow your own vegetables in your backyard and can them yourself.
If they'll even let you. Some governments have prosecuted people for growing their own food. I remember, and it was in the front yard, but still, I remember a story out of, I think it was Orlando, Florida, where, or nearby, maybe it was Kissimmee, but whatever, one of those towns, they came after a couple who had planted a garden because the front yard was getting better sun, right? Like it was a better spot based on where their house was, so put the garden there. And they went after those people and threatened them.
And they continue to do that. There are certain communities where you're not allowed to have a garden on your property. There are homeowners.
City ordinance. They also have what color you could paint your house.
Sure, right.
You have to ask permission to trim a tree down or whatever.
Insane.
Micro tyranny.
Access to your house and your backyard and whatever. Yeah, there's a lot of government intervention, and they think it's basically grown and grown and grown over the years.
And it will never stop. It will never stop until people stop obeying these people and stop paying them in a large enough number to where they can't do anything about it. And unfortunately, we're not to that point yet. Not even here in New Hampshire, where we have an active movement and migration of libertarian activists. There's just not enough of us.
I'll tell you what we can do is we can use their money a little bit less because they can't pay all these regulators unless their dollar is valuable and they can print that valuable thing.
That is something
Whereas
we can do.
if we keep trading actual value for things that aren't the dollar, then we can take a little bit of power from them at a time.
Thank you, Bob, for your call tonight. I do appreciate hearing from you. We go on to Stephen in Georgia. You're on Free Talk Live. Stephen.
Hey, so I wanted to weigh in on the food crisis thing real quick.
Yes, sir.
We've lost 40%, like a 40% reduction in restaurants since COVID hit in February of 2020.
Yep.
Are you just saying that's Georgia or your area or the whole country?
That's the whole country.
Okay.
Wow. So, well, when you think about it, it's closer to about 50% because restaurants are still opening a little bit, but the overall number has gone down 40%.
I don't feel like I've seen that happening here. I mean, I know some have gone under.
I've definitely seen some of that.
I have seen definitely reduced hours. I've seen
reduced hours.
Reduced hours. I've seen reduced staff. The staff that they have are asked to do more.
Yep, that's true.
We did see. We're not urban at all.
It's a town.
We're. I'm trying to remember how many folks.
I don't eat out much, but I definitely heard in Manchester about a couple of places that had to close down.
It isn't 40%, though. I mean, are you factoring in the reduced staffing and the reduced hours into the 40%, or are you just saying flat out 40% of restaurants are closed, never coming back?
40% of restaurants are closed, never coming back. And the only thing that, makes a difference as far as what you're seeing is the more urban areas are seeing a bigger hit.
Okay.
Yeah, that's got to be a huge part of it. Like, I mean, the restrictions were bad here, but they were not nearly as bad as, say, New York City, or Los Angeles, where I'm sure there was a huge concentration of these restaurants. So I know that they had worse restrictions, so those had to be even harder to survive as a business.
Yep.
And Stephen, you do work in the restaurant industry, just for our listeners that may not be familiar with your voice.
I do. And the other thing about this is not only have we lost 40% of restaurants, but in my 2015, in my 7 years of doing this, it wasn't until recently that you would order something and the computer wouldn't even allow you to order it. There was one time several years ago at Christmas, we ordered, I think 2,000 pounds of ham and they sent us 1,800 and we called and they sent us the 200 pounds real quick, and now it's not a big deal to be like, hey, we need 700 pounds of ribs, and they go, well, you're going to get 350.
Deal with it. Wow. Just real quick, the 40% number, is that just something you cooked up, or did you see it in some kind of industry publication? Where'd that come from?
That's from the Federation of Chefs, which is the, I guess, like the union, you could say.
The Federation of Chefs. Okay, got it. Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate hearing from you tonight. Appreciate the inside scoop there in the industry. If you want to weigh in on the food crisis and the economic situation, which, of course, was all brought on by the government, it's Free Talk Live. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it. And once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world. So I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here. And I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism, will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market. Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project early movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
Should you be able to earn an honest living free from senseless government interference? The Institute for Justice thinks so. That's why we've spent years defending hard-working men and women from pointless government regulations. Nationwide, IJ has created opportunity by reducing government power, but there is still more work to be done. Visit our website today at ij.org. Let IJ take care of the government so you can take care of your business.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
Free Talk live. Moments remain. Maybe enough time for you if you get on the line right now. 603-283-6160. Live Saturday show here tonight. It's Ian,
Peakless Mountaineer,
and the Captain.
And Free Talk Live is brought to you by Bitcoin.com. If you're ready to start learning about cryptocurrency like Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, get over to Bitcoin.com. Click Get Started at the top of the page, and you'll get some introductory videos there. You can watch the first one. It takes, I think, 3 minutes of your time. You may want to watch more, in which case, dig as deep as you like over at Bitcoin.com. Click Get Started to start learning about some of the basics about crypto. You definitely want to learn some of these concepts, like what's decentralization when it comes to money. What does that even mean? You gotta get wrap your mind around some of these ideas, because some of them are newer. They don't take that much to really start to understand. You just have to get into it. Go to Bitcoin.com, click Get Started, and you can do that there. Also, they got the latest news headlines every day over at news.bitcoin.com and so many other features at Bitcoin.com. You can buy your first cryptos there through Bitcoin.com and do so much more. It's once again Bitcoin.com. Back to your phone calls and thoughts. Gigi is on the line in South Carolina. Go ahead, Gigi.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey.
Regarding the topic at hand of food shortages, a wonderful current event indeed, gentlemen. I would like to point out that there is a very, I think, underappreciated and perhaps little known law, federal law. It was passed under President Bill Clinton's first administration, known as Good Samaritan Law, and it permits restaurants, grocery stores, mom-and-pop food shops, and fast food chains that are franchised or owned by the corporate office to donate food every day or as often or as little as they wish without the threat of lawsuits being slapped on them. And it's a win-win.
Just to be clear, when you say lawsuits, are you referring, Gigi, to the idea that someone might sue if it was expired food or something? Is that what you mean by lawsuits?
Well, some people could be pursuing a false claim of food poisoning, correct. Mm-hmm. However, it is a win-win by and large because businesses can obtain a tax write-off and charities, food pantries, shelters, things of that nature get food.
Sure. Yeah, it seems like a fine idea. I mean, as long as there's a litigious society that we have, obviously, then it makes sense to exempt a situation like that from any kind of litigation.
Yeah, that's great to know. Nation.
We do indeed. I wish we didn't, but there it is.
I would like to also compliment, I believe it was Ian, who earlier correctly identified the definition of assault pertaining to Mr. Olson's complaint, as usual, from New Mexico. Ian was correct. Legally, an assault, when you accuse someone of assaulting me or another person, it refers to a physical altercation that the other person did against your body or a verbal threat of physically harming you. That is the assault.
Well, now, whether or not David in New Mexico was assaulted is another question, because
we were not present, so we don't know.
That's a good point.
Well, I mean, according to the definition you gave, I mean, his own subjective feeling of fear, I mean, which he said that he said it was assault, according to the definition. So that means he felt afraid.
To Mr. Olson's memory, that, and I'm paraphrasing here, gentlemen, that the judge walked over to him and simply said verbally, "What do you want me to do about it?" That is not an assault.
I agree.
I tend to agree that likely a jury would not find that to be assault in that case, but it would ultimately be up to the jury.
Mr. Olson could have felt threatened by the tone of his voice or how close physically the judge came to his person. That is legitimate, but it doesn't constitute an assault.
Thank you, Gigi, for the call tonight. Appreciate it. Oh, so a little further on this. This is from the Legal Dictionary, thefreedictionary.com. The act required for an assault must be overt, although words are alone insufficient, which is what Gigi was saying there. Just simply the words the judge said to David would not qualify as assault. They might create an assault when coupled with some action that indicates the ability to carry out a threat. The mere threat to harm is not an assault. However, a threat combined with a raised fist might be sufficient if it causes reasonable apprehension of harm in the victim. So it would really be up to a jury to decide whether David's fear, if there really was some, was reasonable or not.
And
That's
just
what it would come down to.
Just to sort of pile on to Gigi's Good Samaritan Act, apparently it covers or supersedes liability for donations to nonprofit organizations only.
Okay, not just food banks.
It doesn't seem to give any liability protection to restaurants or grocery stores or anything like that who donate directly to people in need. It only covers their liability if they donate to a nonprofit organization.
I see.
At least according to what I just read. So
now I will say that the last time I looked into this subject, no homeless person had ever in history, even once, attempted to sue the source of their food for food poisoning.
Glad to hear that. Let's go to Olivia in Arizona. You're on Free Talk Live, Olivia.
Hey, I was calling about that really upsetting topic that you talked about a couple of nights ago about the guards letting the male prisoners in with the female prisoners and allowing them to rape them and assault them for 2 hours, several hours.
Yeah, this is an insane story. It was Clark County, Indiana, the jail there that this happened.
I looked at the guy's picture, and he looks like an absolute creep, and I can almost guarantee you that he himself was raping the prisoners himself. I don't know why we allow male prisoners in a female unit, period. That should stop immediately. If you
mean, when you say male prisoners, you meant male corrections officers?
Male corrections officers, yes. That needs to be stopped immediately.
Well, I mean, there's no reason why a female corrections officer wouldn't also be a slime ball.
I mean, that could happen, but I think it's a little bit less likely. I mean,
I'd agree.
I'm going to recommend a YouTube channel if anybody's interested in hearing more stories about how much rape goes on in prisons. It's by Jordan. It's a lot. It's terrible. Yeah. Jordan, spelled with a Y, Upchurch Cahill, or Uphill. Oh, let me see. I'm sorry. But Jordan Uphill. She uphills battles on YouTube. She's got a channel that documents, and these people are never punished for any of this stuff. And another terrible case out of Indiana, there was a woman named Michaela Dockery, and she had a perforated bowel, and in a work release program, and they allowed her to die. Like, I just posted it to the Free Talk Live Mastodon, but it's just horrific.
Well, and you make a good point, too. There's so much rape that happens in the United States prison system that most of the rapes that occur there.
Yeah. And it's well known. It's one of the threats that law enforcement agents will make to people. Like, do you want to, they will imply that by them arresting you, you will go to prison where you will be raped. And this is just something that people accept. Like, oh, well, those are bad people. They deserve it.
And other people, like, on the internet and that kind of thing, will wish that upon people. I hope he goes to jail and gets raped. Right? I've seen that
I will
before.
say this. Mark Edge was in prison for 9 years of his life for a crime he didn't commit. In Florida, and he says the whole prison rape thing's pretty overblown. Like, there's a lot of talk about it in mainstream media. There's a lot of references in movies and television shows, but it's nowhere near what they say it is.
Well, maybe not in that prison.
He was in one of the worst prisons in Florida.
Well, I mean, statistically though, it is an enormous problem.
Well, that's just what his experience was. Go ahead, Olivia.
One more fact about women being incarcerated over the past 40 to 50 years, it's gone up 730%. Is that because women are becoming insanely violent? No, there's another reason. So they're definitely being victimized left, right, and center.
Well, I mean, the reason is because of the war on drugs and other victimless crimes like prostitution and other, things that women can get caught up in that maybe not, weren't as enforced or didn't exist several decades ago. Thank you, Olivia, for the call tonight. If you didn't get on, I did notice a caller jumped in at the very end of the show. Unfortunately, I don't want to put you on for 20 seconds and then, you don't get the chance to express yourself at all. So I want to invite anybody who didn't get on tonight to call tomorrow night because the captain will be heading up our Sunday night show.
It's true.
And we do have open phones every single night. We're here live 7 nights per week on Free Talk Live. It's always best to call sooner. I understand you call when you call, but if you call earlier, we will guarantee you get on the air.
And just one last note about the prisons, all of the terrible things that happen. This is what happens when there's no competition and you are forced to be a part of this system.
And you're forced to pay for it, even if you don't like it.
Yep.
Out of time for tonight. You can join us between now and tomorrow night over at freetalklive.com, where we have archives you can download. You can subscribe to our podcast. Just go to feeds.freetalklive.com. You'll find the RSS feeds and other interesting links there. And we'll see you tomorrow night.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means,